Ad hominem. Imagine a spirited debate takes place in a cozy cafe, rich with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Two friends engage in a discussion about the importance of climate change, passionately invoking statistics, evidence, and ethics. Suddenly, a third friend chimes in, not with facts or counterarguments, but with a personal attack, suggesting that the first speaker could not possibly be credible because of their choice to drive a gas-guzzling car. The conversation, once focused on ideas, morphs into a clash of personal qualities. This is the essence of the ad hominem fallacy, when the person becomes the target rather than the argument. It invites us to ponder a profound philosophical dilemma. What is the role of personal character in the assessment of ideas? Can we separate the person from their assertions? Or do our biases and judgments cloud our ability to engage with their arguments rationally? Philosophers have long explored the implications of ad hominem reasoning. Aristotle, for instance, spoke about logical fallacies and the importance of grounding debates in logical reasoning rather than personal attacks. Yet despite the call for rational discourse, ad hominem arguments proliferate in modern conversations, especially in a polarized world where identity and beliefs entwine. Consider, too, the contrasting perspectives from two influential philosophers, Immanuel Kant and Friedrich Nietzsche. Kant's categorical imperative urges us to treat others as ends in themselves, not merely as means to an end. Under this lens, personal attacks undermine the dignity of individuals and distract from the merit of their ideas. Nietzsche, however, introduces a provocative angle. He argues that perspectives are contingent upon individual backgrounds, asserting that a person's experiences shape their moral framework. If their character is inherently linked to their argument, can we dismiss that connection, or must we grapple with the nuances of their identity? In our modern world, ad hominem arguments are rampant, particularly in political discourse, social media debates, and even everyday encounters. A politician's character flaws come to overshadow their policies. An activist's past is weaponized against their ethical stance. Such tactics raise philosophical questions about the weight we assign to personal integrity in evaluating ideas. Are we engaging in critical thinking, or are we allowing our prejudices to dictate our understanding? Yet amidst this complexity, the paradox remains. By launching personal attacks, we risk dismissing valid points, even when backed by flawed characters. Conversely, maintaining fidelity to an argument can lead us to overlook individuals' ideas, failings that could inform our judgment. This delicate balance forces us into introspection. How do we discern the merit of an argument without falling into a web of irrelevant personal judgments? As we navigate a world fraught with ad hominem encounters, we are compelled to consider: what are the boundaries between character and argument? How can we foster an environment of deeper understanding while acknowledging our biases? The journey invites us not toward answers, but deeper reflection on how we communicate and connect with one another in the tapestry of ideas, a place where every voice deserves to be heard, yet every idea must stand on its own. The inquiry lingers, gently nudging us to examine our own discourse, reminding us of the power of thought beyond the individual. Straw man. Imagine a heated debate between two friends over a controversial topic, like climate change. One passionately argues for stricter regulations on industries to protect the environment. In response, the other claims, "So you think we should just shut down all factories and send everyone to live in caves?" What happened here? Rather than addressing the original concern, the second friend has created a distorted version of the argument to dismiss it easily. This is the essence of the straw man fallacy, a misrepresentation that undermines real dialogue and undermines our capacity for reflective thought. This philosophical dilemma invites us to consider the importance of truthfulness and clarity in our communication. At the heart of the straw man fallacy lies the notion that understanding requires a genuine engagement with the perspectives we oppose. To truly engage, one must strive to comprehend the intricacies of the other side's position. Yet more often than we realize, we might find ourselves erecting these figurative straw men, opting for simplicity over nuance, making it easier to attack an argument rather than confront its significance. Historically, philosophers like Aristotle recognized the dangers of fallacious reasoning, urging us to seek honest discourse. In today's polarized climate, the straw man fallacy raises questions not just about the integrity of arguments, but about the motivations behind them. Is it easier for us to misrepresent an argument, to soothe our egos, to feel superior in our beliefs? If we often gravitate toward caricatures of opposing views, are we unwittingly contributing to a cycle of misunderstanding and animosity? Take, for instance, modern-day debates on social media platforms. A viral post might condense complex social issues into slogans, stripping away the intricacies of meaningful discussion. People rally around extremes, endorsing mischaracterizations that stifle honest engagement. In such an environment, how can one cultivate the patience and empathy necessary for true dialogue? Perhaps it requires a conscious effort to slow down and unpack arguments thoughtfully before reacting. Consider this. What if embracing the complexity of opposing viewpoints could lead to deeper understanding, allowing us to appreciate the shared humanity behind them? If we allow ourselves to dismantle the straw men we have erected, new possibilities might emerge. Possibilities for conversation instead of conflict. Instead of shouting louder, perhaps the answer lies in listening closely. The ethereal nature of the straw man invites us to reflect on the interplay between beliefs and conversation. If we acknowledge the limitations of our understanding, can we seek wisdom in the perspectives we initially resist? The art of debate lies not merely in winning, but in forging connections through meaningful exchanges. So as you navigate conversations, remember this: can you engage with the arguments that challenge you without succumbing to distortion? Think about the moments when you've encountered a straw man in your discussions. What did it reveal about communication, beliefs, and understanding? Embrace the uncertainty and let it stir a desire for deeper contemplation, not just within dialogue, but within yourself. In this journey, perhaps the most profound lesson is not about winning debates, but about the beauty of genuine connection amidst the complexity of thought. Appeal to ignorance. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, misty forest, where the trees loom high and the paths weave into uncertainty. In front of you lies a question that seems deceptively straightforward, yet profound. Can we truly claim that something is true simply because it has not been proven false? This, at its core, is the appeal to ignorance, a philosophical dilemma that invites us to explore the thin line between knowledge and belief. As we wander through this intricate landscape, we find ourselves entangled in a web of reasoning where certainty collides with skepticism. The appeal to ignorance posits that if something cannot be disproven, it must therefore be accepted as true. This form of reasoning often surfaces in debates about the existence of alien life, the supernatural, or even the nuances of morality. Since we have yet to disprove these entities or ideas, are we justified in believing in their existence? Philosopher David Hume reminds us that belief devoid of evidence is a slippery slope. If we accept claims solely because they lack contradiction, we may find ourselves embracing dangerous and irrational ideas. For instance, the notion of witches was widely accepted in bygone centuries, not due to definitive proof, but simply because they remained undetected in the eyes of those who believed. It led to panic, injustice, and tragic consequences, a sobering reminder of the perils encapsulated within this line of thinking. Yet, conversely, we are drawn to the voices of those who advocate for openness toward unfounded possibilities. Thinkers like Carl Sagan suggest that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Perhaps the unknown beckons us toward exploration rather than dismissal. Our ignorance could simply mean that we have not yet acquired the knowledge needed to either affirm or refute these possibilities. Isn't it an alluring thought that the boundaries of our understanding are fluid, ever expanding as we venture forth into the quest for knowledge? In the modern world, the appeal to ignorance finds its way into daily conversations, from debates surrounding climate change to discussions about vaccines. If there's no solid evidence proving that this is harmful, it must be safe. Such reasoning can lead us astray, as it skirts the responsibility of seeking real, verifiable evidence in preference to convenient assumptions. It becomes a catalyst for misinformation, leading us away from reason and toward baseless conclusions. So, as we navigate this verdant landscape, a blend of shadows and light, where should our gaze be directed? Should we crave the solid ground of undeniable evidence, or may it be fruitful to entertain the uncertainties that lie just beyond our understanding? Is it not the very essence of humanity to grapple with questions that may forever remain unanswered? As we step out of the forest, we carry with us the lingering notion that the appeal to ignorance challenges us to dwell within the ambiguity of belief and knowledge. In this vast expanse where answers elude us, we are invited to ponder: how do we discern truth in a world rich with uncertainties? The choice remains with you, to cling to the familiar or to embrace the endless exploration of thought, where each question opens the door to new wonder. Slippery slope. Imagine a small village, once vibrant and filled with laughter, now bustling with whispers of dissent. One day, a seemingly innocuous law is passed, an edict that restricts public gatherings to prevent disease spread. At first, the villagers agree, believing it to be a temporary measure for their health. But soon, the same measure evolves. Discussions about the law turn to protests, but the authorities shut them down, citing a need for order. What began as a protective gesture descends into a climate of fear. This raises an unsettling question: how do small, seemingly harmless actions lead to significant and potentially harmful consequences? This is the slippery slope dilemma, a concept that evokes a range of philosophical debates. At its core, it suggests that a relatively minor action can trigger a cascade of events that culminates in severe and often unexpected outcomes. Critics of this reasoning argue that it strays into fallacious thinking, an unproven claim that one event will inevitably lead to another without sufficient justification. Yet, historical instances abound where lax regulations spiral into chaos, compelling us to ponder: might there be wisdom in caution? Philosophers like John Stuart Mill would encourage us to consider the implications of liberty and responsibility. He might argue that while individual freedoms are essential, they should not infringe upon the rights and safety of others. Yet, could Mill's perspective lead to a slippery slope where the authorities can justify an infringement on rights for the sake of public welfare? This is the tension that underlies the slippery slope, the balance between necessary intervention and the risk of overreach. Modern society continually grapples with these dilemmas, often in discussions surrounding technology, governance, and morality. Consider the debates around surveillance technology. Proponents champion it as a means to ensure safety, yet critics warn that once privacy is curtailed, what follows? The situation echoes the thoughts of philosophers like Michel Foucault, who saw power as pervasive, ever increasing in surveillance and control. Is it possible that once we concede a little, we may unwittingly enable a trend toward greater restrictions? But if we remain overly cautious, do we risk stagnation? A slippery slope can also signal an undue paralysis in decision-making, prompting societies to forego important progress out of fear. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche cautioned against weakness in the face of uncertainty. He challenged his contemporaries to embrace challenges and potential chaos, arguing that growth often emerges from a struggle against adversity. As we reflect on the nature of the slippery slope, we confront the uncomfortable truth that life may not present neat, linear paths, but rather a series of complex, interconnected choices. Can we navigate the space between precaution and progress without spiraling into fear-driven inertia or unchecked consequences? Ultimately, this exploration leaves us with more questions than answers. What small actions in our own lives hold the potential for broader change? How can we discern when caution serves us and when it traps us? The slippery slope reminds us of the delicate interplay between our decisions, urging us to ponder the paths we choose while remaining open to the consequences they may bring. The journey does not end here. It merely invites us to continue reflecting on the balance between intention, action, and the unpredictable tapestry of life. Hasty generalization. Imagine a peaceful town nestled in a valley, where life flows gently and neighbors greet each other with warmth. One day, a traveler arrives in this town and notices a few individuals behaving rudely. Based on just these fleeting interactions, the traveler concludes that the entire town is unwelcoming and unfriendly. This snap judgment leads them to avoid the town in the future, missing out on the richness of its community. This scenario illustrates the concept of hasty generalization, a logical fallacy where one draws a broad conclusion based on insufficient evidence. It beckons us to consider a deeper philosophical question. How do we come to know the truth, and what role does our perception play in shaping our understanding of the world around us? Throughout history, philosophers like David Hume have debated the limits of human understanding. Hume argued that our knowledge derives from experience, yet he also warned of the fallibility inherent in such experiences. If we narrow our conclusions based on isolated incidents, might we distort the truth rather than reflect it? Our cognitive biases often lead us to embrace convenient narratives. But in doing so, do we risk overlooking the complexity of reality? Conversely, rationalists like René Descartes sought foundational truths, striving to build knowledge based on clear and distinct ideas. Yet even Descartes viewed the human mind as susceptible to error, especially when we gather knowledge through experience. This duality presents a tension. While our experiences shape us, they are also prone to misinterpretation. What does it mean, then, to seek truth amidst such imperfect means? Consider the modern world, filled with social media and instantaneous judgments. A viral video may portray an event out of context, prompting a flurry of opinions and conclusions. Hasty generalization emerges in online discourse, where individuals often form sweeping statements about groups based on a singular or biased portrayal. This phenomenon can lead to stereotypes and division, echoing a timeless struggle. How do we foster understanding in a landscape so quick to categorize and condemn? The implications ripple into our daily lives as well. When we equate one negative experience with a universal truth, that all servers are rude because of one unpleasant meal, or that a specific culture is somehow inferior based on anecdotal encounters, we risk perpetuating misunderstanding. Our hasty generalizations can foster hostility rather than connection, overshadowing the genuine beauty found in diversity. As we continue reflecting on this dilemma, we are left with lingering questions. How do we balance our experiences with empathy and openness? What practices can we adopt to cultivate a mindset that allows us to embrace complexity rather than simplify? Must we always question our instinctual conclusions? And if so, how might this affect our interactions and relationships in an increasingly polarized world? It seems that within each of us lies both the potential for insight and the risk of projection. In navigating our judgments, perhaps the most vital step is to remain curious and ready to engage, knowing that every interaction adds nuance to our understanding. And as we gently explore this philosophical terrain, we can ponder, how will we choose to embrace the richness of our shared human experience rather than confine it to hasty assumptions? Circular argument. Imagine you sit down with a friend at a quaint cafe, and the conversation drifts towards a perplexing claim. The law is the law because it must be obeyed. Your friend looks skeptical, prompting you to ask, but why must it be obeyed? This leads to, because it is the law. As the circularity of the reasoning becomes evident, a profound realization settles in. Have you truly uncovered a convincing argument, or is this merely an exercise in repetition? This is the essence of a circular argument, a philosophical conundrum that prompts us to question the foundations of reasoning and belief. At its core, a circular argument is one where the conclusion is already assumed in the premise, leading us back to where we began without offering new insight. The philosopher Aristotle noted this phenomenon, cautioning that such reasoning can mislead, entrenching individuals in beliefs that lack independent validation. Consider the famous example surrounding moral philosophy. Murder is wrong because killing is morally wrong. This tautology offers no supportive evidence. Instead, it simply rephrases the assertion. Yet, in our lives, circular reasoning often seeps into various conversations, politics, ethics, even our own self-justifications. I believe in a fair world because fairness is the cornerstone of society. One could argue that this belief provides comfort, but does it stand up to scrutiny? Philosophers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant urged us to enrich our inquiries and avoid such reasoning pitfalls. While Hume emphasized the importance of empirical evidence in constructing knowledge, Kant explored the boundaries of reason, reminding us that genuine understanding often requires breaking free from conventional beliefs. Yet our innate desire for certainty often pushes us toward familiar cycles. We look for reassurance in what feels right, even when those feelings stem from circular logic. Today, these philosophical principles resonate in contemporary discussions surrounding misinformation. In an age where claims are often reinforced rather than explored critically, circular arguments can hold great sway over public discourse. Politicians may assert, "My policies work because they produce results," appealing to a narrative that repeatedly justifies their actions without addressing the underlying issues. Are we like the proverbial frog in boiling water, unaware of our immersion in this circularity? The consequences of circular reasoning extend beyond mere rhetoric. It can create barriers to personal growth and understanding, forming echoes of justification that simply bounce off one another. In intimate relationships, we might justify actions or sentiments without examining their origins, creating unresolved tensions instead of fostering authentic communication. As we contemplate the role of circular arguments in our lives, one can't help but wonder where genuine understanding begins and ends. What if knowledge isn't a static edifice, but a dynamic journey requiring constant questioning? Perhaps embracing uncertainty allows us to step outside cyclical patterns, inspiring exploration and deeper connections. If we accept that circular reasoning encircles us, we find ourselves at a crossroads, poised for reflection. How often do we challenge our own assumptions? Are we willing to peel back the layers of our reasoning and embrace the discomfort of uncertainty? In a world rich with complexity, maybe the most profound answers lie not in circling back to familiar beliefs, but in daring to venture into the unknown. As you ponder these questions, may they accompany you on your journey of discovery, inviting continued exploration long after the cafe has faded from view. Red herring. Imagine you're in a lively debate about the moral implications of environmental degradation. Suddenly, someone interjects with a story about their childhood pet, a beloved dog that once chewed up their favorite pair of sneakers. This story, while amusing, has nothing to do with the pressing issue at hand, yet it captures attention, causing the room to chuckle and momentarily diverting focus away from the serious conversation. Here lies the essence of the red herring, a distraction from the main issue that leads us away from the intended path of discussion. The red herring is not just a rhetorical device. It is a doorway into a rich philosophical exploration about the nature of argument, truth, and human attention. Throughout history, various thinkers have illuminated how logic can be obscured by emotionally charged anecdotes or irrelevant tangents. Aristotle first depicted rhetoric as the art of persuasion. But as we dive deeper into logic, we encounter the challenge of distinguishing substance from misdirection. In today's world, where information bombards us from every direction, the red herring finds new expression in media narratives that sidetrack us from critically engaging with significant societal issues. For instance, in discussions about climate change, talk often shifts to personal lifestyle choices, what we should eat, whether we should recycle, while systemic factors like corporate irresponsibility or government policies are glossed over instead of addressed. Critics, including philosopher Noam Chomsky, argue that this pattern is a deliberate ploy of manipulation, steering us away from confronting uncomfortable realities. On the other hand, one could argue that the red herring, in its own peculiar way, reflects our complex human nature. As philosopher Soren Kierkegaard posited, our existence is fraught with anxiety and uncertainty. In this light, the red herring becomes a coping mechanism, a way to provide distraction when we are overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. Thus, are we ambushing ourselves with unnecessary distractions, or are we seeking some respite from burdens too heavy to bear? Yet, as we unravel this conundrum, we discover that the red herring is more than a mere diversion. It raises significant questions about how we value discourse and seek truth. When we engage in conversation, do we genuinely pursue the essence of matters, or do we allow our minds to wander down pleasant or entertaining avenues, avoiding potentially uncomfortable discussions? Consider the digital age, where scrolling through articles and videos allows for quick diversions. Endless lists of cat videos or celebrity gossip can serve as red herrings, leading us away from societal challenges that require our attention. This culture of distraction threatens to dull our critical engagement and understanding of pressing issues, compelling us to ask ourselves how we can reclaim focus in a world steeped in diversions. As you reflect on the role of red herrings in your life and in society at large, consider, how often do you allow yourself to be led astray from meaningful dialogue? What truths remain unexplored due to our collective penchant for distraction? Ultimately, embracing these questions invites a contemplative stance toward our engagement with the world, reminding us that clarity often demands more than mere attention. It requires a commitment to stay the course, even when the lure of distraction beckons enticingly. To Quoque, imagine a conversation between two friends sitting in a cozy cafe, each sipping their favorite brew. They are deep in discussion about the importance of honesty, particularly when it comes to the decisions we make. One friend passionately emphasizes that we must always act with integrity and be truthful, highlighting how dishonesty can mar relationships and erode trust. The other friend nods along, only to suddenly pose a question. "But aren't you the one who lied to me last week about being late?" This moment of tension encapsulates the essence of the True Scotsman fallacy, which suggests that one can dismiss valid criticism by accusing the accuser of hypocrisy. The phrase itself translates from Latin as "you too," pointing to a common human tendency to deflect responsibility by highlighting someone else's failings. This raises intriguing philosophical questions. Is pointing out hypocrisy a legitimate rebuttal, or does it merely distract from the real argument at hand? The True Scotsman dilemma unfolds as we delve deeper into this dynamic. Philosophers and logicians warn us that while it is essential to recognize hypocrisy in others, doing so does not resolve the original issue. For instance, if a politician advocates for environmental protection but is found to have a carbon footprint larger than average, their hypocrisy is evident. Yet, does that render their environmental message void? Critics like David Hume and Immanuel Kant challenge us to reflect on the nature of moral arguments. Should our actions align with our beliefs? And if they don't, does that negate the validity of those beliefs? Modern society offers a vivid backdrop for interpreting True Scotsman. Consider social media, an arena where individuals can quickly find and spread evidence of perceived hypocrisy. A celebrity advocating for mental health awareness may face scrutiny if their past behavior contradicts that advocacy. While this accountability can be a vector for important conversations about personal growth and change, it can also lead to a culture of intimidation, where the focus shifts from the message to the messenger. Furthermore, the dilemma invites us to grapple with deeper ethical questions. Can one's failures diminish the significance of their advocates' messages? And in our personal lives, how often do we dismiss constructive criticism simply because the critic has their flaws? This feels especially poignant in intimate relationships, where friends or partners may hesitate to voice concerns for fear of being accused of hypocrisy. Ultimately, the True Scotsman fallacy reminds us of the tangled web of human judgment. While it's important to confront hypocrisy, we must also remain open to the complexity of human experience, acknowledging that everyone at some point may stumble. As you reflect on this, consider how often you have heard a critique only to find yourself thinking back on the speaker's actions. Does this tendency lead to meaningful conversation, or does it create a stumbling block for genuine dialogue? In a world rich with ethical challenges and multifaceted conversations, the heart of True Scotsman beckons us to explore the nature of accountability, integrity, and the importance of holding both ourselves and others to a standard that encourages growth rather than defensiveness. As you ponder, where do you draw the line between meaningful criticism and mere distraction. The journey into understanding this delicate balance continues, inviting infinite contemplation. Appeal to authority. Imagine you're standing in a crowded lecture hall, mesmerized by a renowned scientist passionately discussing the intricacies of quantum physics. As you listen, you feel the weight of their expertise envelop you like a warm blanket of assurance. But outside that hall, the question lingers. Should we blindly trust their insights because of their reputation? Or should we dig deeper, seeking the evidence ourselves? This scenario nudges us into the philosophical dilemma known as the appeal to authority. It poses a thought-provoking issue. When, if ever, is it prudent to accept someone's claims based solely on their position or status? On one hand, we live in a world where knowledge is vast and complex, often leaving individuals feeling overwhelmed. It's understandable to lean on experts, but how do we discern when this reliance becomes a shortcut that diminishes our own critical thinking? Ancient philosophers like Socrates championed the idea of inquiry and skepticism. He famously asserted that the unexamined life is not worth living. The essence of Socratic dialogue encouraged people to question and engage, challenging authority rather than submitting to it. This perspective echoes through history. For instance, Peter Unger, a contemporary philosopher, suggests that placid acceptance of authority can stifle intellectual growth. Yet the counterpoint to this is substantial. The pragmatic approach, espoused by realists like Thomas Kuhn, suggests that accepting expert opinion can be crucial for our cognitive ease. After all, navigating the complexities of modern life, from medical decisions to technological advancements, often requires specialized knowledge beyond the reach of individual scrutiny. Eric M. Uslaner, in his discussions on trust and democracy, argues that social cohesion relies on the acceptance of credible authorities, guiding citizens in forming their beliefs and actions without requiring them to research every claim. In the digital age, the stakes of the appeal to authority seem to rise. Misinformation spreads like wildfire, and social media often amplifies voices with little regard for their merit. The challenge now is distinguishing between genuine expertise and illusory authority. Philosopher Nick Bostrom invites us to ponder whether the authority of an expert can excuse the lack of evidence. If a respected figure claims that climate change is a hoax without substantial data, does their authority carry more weight than an overwhelming scientific consensus? As we traverse this complex landscape, we might find ourselves caught between the pursuit of knowledge and the temptation of convenience. The appeal to authority forces us to reflect on our relationship with knowledge and trust, how much we rely on opinions shaped by others versus our own inquiry. In this reflective moment, open your mind to the idea that perhaps truth exists on a spectrum. It invites us to weigh the expert's authority against the need for personal understanding and responsibility. The balance is delicate, and as we wade through the sea of information surrounding us, we must ask ourselves, when does trust in authority elevate our understanding, and when does it lead us astray? Embrace the uncertainty and let the questions guide you through this fascinating philosophical terrain, allowing the exploration of your own thoughts and beliefs to unfold naturally. False dilemma. Imagine you find yourself standing at a crossroads on a foggy path. To your left, you see a sign that promises security and comfort, yet demands rigid conformity. To your right, there's a path that radiates freedom and spontaneity, but is strewn with uncertainty and risk. You begin to wonder, must we choose only one of these paths, Or is there a third option waiting to be explored? This is the essence of the false dilemma, a philosophical point of view that limits our choices to two stark options, even when more exist. The false dilemma, also known as a false dichotomy, suggests a binary outlook on issues that are often far more nuanced. For instance, when discussing morality, one might encounter the notion that you're either a virtuous person or a nefarious one. But is human behavior really so dichotomous? Philosophers like Aristotle would argue otherwise, proposing a more nuanced view through his concept of the golden mean, where virtue is found between extremes, incorporating context and complexity. This tendency to oversimplify choices can lead us to profound misunderstandings. In political discourse, for instance, we often hear the rhetoric of "you're either with us or against us." Such claims neglect the multitude of beliefs and values that lie within the spectrum of thought. John Stuart Mill championed the idea of individuality and the importance of diverse opinions as foundational to a flourishing democracy. In everyday life, the false dilemma can manifest in personal decisions. When evaluating career paths, one might feel trapped between the secure positions of corporate jobs or the edgy allure of artistic pursuits. Yet, could a blend of both paths be the answer? Some individuals thrive by merging different aspects of their careers, becoming entrepreneurial figures who maintain the safety of a steady income while engaging in the passion projects that fuel their creativity. In an age dominated by social media, this phenomenon becomes even more pronounced. The allure of viral opinions can lead to the simplification of complex issues, where debates are reduced to either you're for equality or against it. Such framing ignores the rich variety of perspectives and solutions that exist, often leading to conflict rather than understanding. Philosophers like Judith Butler emphasize the importance of embracing multiplicity, acknowledging that identifying as one thing doesn't negate other facets of identity. So, what does it mean for us? The false dilemma urges us to recognize that life is rarely black and white, encouraging a search for the shades of gray that sit between extremes. As we navigate our lives, decisions, and moral landscapes, perhaps we can challenge ourselves to question unnecessarily rigid distinctions. As you continue walking along your path, reflect on the choices that lie ahead. Are there more than two? What creative solutions might unfurl if you allow yourself the freedom to explore beyond the confines of binary thinking? Embrace the complexities of life and invite the possibility of a broader horizon as you journey through the intricate maze of existence. There's beauty in the unknown, and sometimes the path not taken holds the most profound insights. The bandwagon effect. Imagine yourself walking through a crowded marketplace. As you pass by a stall, you notice a long line of people eagerly waiting for a new food trend. Let's say, a unique flavor of artisanal ice cream. The line is growing, and you can already see several people indulging in joyful expressions as they take their first bites. As you stand there, perplexed by the ever-increasing excitement, a thought crosses your mind. Should you join this line, or is it merely a fad, a fleeting moment in a world full of choices? This is the essence of the bandwagon effect, a psychological phenomenon where individuals adopt beliefs or behaviors because others are doing so. The allure of conformity can often overshadow our individual preferences, leading us to question our autonomy. Is it inherent in human nature to seek approval from the collective, or do we possess the power to defy such inclinations? Philosophers like David Hume have emphasized the importance of emotions and social influences in human decision-making. In a world where individuals are not isolated thinkers, but rather social beings, shaped by their environment. Our choices can easily sway in the currents of popularity. However, Socrates would challenge this notion, urging us to examine our paths with a critical gaze rather than being guided by others' opinions. What does it mean to think for ourselves? In modern contexts, the bandwagon effect can be observed in political movements, fashion trends, and even in social media, where viral content often influences countless individuals to share or endorse ideas that may not resonate with their values. There's a paradox here. While the collective might reflect a democratic idea of shared opinion, it can also lead to groupthink, stifling diverse voices and authentic engagement with our beliefs. This dilemma naturally raises questions about authenticity and integrity. How often do we genuinely resonate with a prevailing idea versus how often do we adopt it solely because it's popular? When we jump onto the bandwagon, do we lose something essential about our individual beliefs, or can we find a way to marry our thoughts with the collective narrative? Moreover, the bandwagon can lead to ethical dilemmas. Consider a climate change debate where individuals might support certain policies or products because they are trending, rather than genuinely understanding or believing in the impact of their choices. This mimetic behavior risks reducing profound issues to ephemeral trends. Does the influx of support add weight to critical matters, or does it dilute meaningful discourse into mere noises of consensus? As you ponder the implications of the bandwagon effect, it becomes clear that it's a complex interplay of choice, identity, and morality. Are we mere reflections of the crowd around us? The journey prompts continuous reflection. Could you, even in the face of majority opinion, choose a different path that resonates more with your values? Or perhaps, in aligning with the bandwagon, could you discover a deeper sense of connection within a community of shared beliefs? In this indistinct space between individual thought and collective wisdom lies the heart of our decision-making. The exploration of the bandwagon effect invites you to ask, where do you stand, and how do you navigate the ever-shifting landscape of popular opinion? There's no definitive answer. Rather, like the line in the market, the quest for self-awareness and authenticity continues as we explore our role within the tapestry of collective thought. Begging the question. Imagine a serene evening, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. You sit quietly, contemplating a question that lingers in the air. Is everything we believe only true because it is asserted so? Take, for instance, the statement, "The Bible is the Word of God, for it says so in the Bible." This assertion seems self-referential, creating a circular reasoning that begs the very question it seeks to answer. How can something be considered true based solely on its claims without independent verification? This is the essence of the philosophical fallacy known as begging the question. The concept invites us into a realm where the foundations of our beliefs and arguments come into play. Philosophers like Aristotle were some of the earliest to identify such fallacies, acknowledging that a sound argument cannot rely on premises that assume the conclusion to be true. Yet, aren't we all occasionally guilty of this in our everyday reasoning? Socrates, known for his dialectical method, encouraged relentless questioning to challenge assumptions, demonstrating that inquiry is a powerful tool to unveil truths hidden in the shadows of circular logic. In contemporary discourse, we often encounter begging the question in political debates and social media, where individuals repeat assertions without providing external evidence. Take, for instance, the claim that democracy is the best form of government because it allows for freedom. Without exploring the definition of democracy and its implications, we risk falling into a loop where our arguments gain a semblance of truth simply through repetition. Philosopher David Hume pointed out that human reasoning is often dictated by habit rather than logic, suggesting that we are prone to accept ideas that resonate with pre-existing beliefs. Additionally, this fallacy reverberates through discussions of morality. When someone argues that stealing is wrong because it violates societal norms, we must ask, are societal norms inherently just? If the underlying principle is taken for granted, how do we arrive at a meaningful understanding of right and wrong? Imagine a world where ethical questions are answered in circles. How could we find a moral compass if each assertion simply leads back to the same belief? Yet, while these contrasts can seem frustrating, they also spark reflection. They compel us to seek deeper truths, urging a journey into the foundations of our thought. Perhaps this search takes us beyond mere assertions. Could it be that truth lies not solely in explanation, but in the very process of doubting and questioning what we accept without scrutiny? In this tranquil moment, we are left to ponder what it means to seek truth. Are our beliefs merely echoes of what others in society have claimed? Or do we possess the power to break free from circular reasoning? As we sit and contemplate this delicate interplay of assertion and belief, we may find ourselves in a world enriched by inquiry, rather than confined by presumed wisdom. Let the questions linger as we drift into the quiet of night, inviting us to engage in a continual search for understanding, an exploration that may never yield definitive answers, but instead illuminates our path forward. Appeal to emotion. Imagine a moment of stillness. A child stands on a stage, reciting a poem about loss and longing. The audience is entranced, some with tears gently streaming down their cheeks, others momentarily lost in their memories. Each word touches a raw nerve, opening hearts and invoking feelings buried deep within. What is it about this experience that resonates so profoundly? Is it simply the words, or is it the emotion they evoke? In this reflection lies the philosophical dilemma of the appeal to emotion, a concept that challenges our understanding of logic, reason, and human connection. At its core, the appeal to emotion suggests that emotional responses can be just as powerful, or even more so, than rational arguments in shaping human opinions and behaviors. This raises pivotal questions. Are our decisions primarily governed by emotion? And if so, can we consider ourselves rational beings? Or is it possible that emotions offer insights beyond what cold logic can provide, acting as a compass, guiding us through the complexities of life? Throughout history, philosophers have debated the role emotions play in moral reasoning. For example, David Hume, an 18th-century philosopher, famously argued that reason is the slave of the passions. He believed that our moral judgments stem from our feelings, rather than reason alone. If Hume is correct, then emotions are not just ancillary, they are foundational in how we understand right and wrong, shaping our choices and beliefs. Conversely, Immanuel Kant emphasized the importance of reason as the guiding force for morality, asserting that emotions could easily mislead our judgment. According to Kant, true moral actions arise not from feelings, but from rational understanding and adherence to universal laws. Yet, as we navigate the world, is it really feasible to strip away the emotional dimension from our decision-making process? Consider the social realities we face today. Advocacy campaigns that leverage heart-wrenching stories to resonate with potential supporters. A powerful image of a refugee child, a video capturing acts of kindness amidst despair. These elements stir emotions, compelling action and engagement like statistics alone seldom could. Here, the appeal to emotion serves a significant purpose. It invites people to feel connected to broader human experiences, nurturing empathy and action in times of crisis. Yet there remains a tension in relying solely on emotional appeals. Emotional manipulation can lead to allegiance based on fear or pity rather than informed consent. In a world rife with misinformation, how do we discern between genuine emotional connection and persuasive tactics designed to exploit our feelings? As thinkers like Aristotle theorized, rhetoric blends emotion and reason to persuade, but the ethical implications of these methods compel us to reflect critically on the messages we consume. As we ponder the appeal to emotion, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Emotions shape our identities, guide our decisions, and connect us to others. Yet they can also distort perception and lead us astray. Perhaps the true philosophical inquiry lies not in the binary of emotion versus reason, but rather in the complex interplay between the two, urging us toward greater awareness of our motivations, our connections, and the narratives that bind us. In moments of quiet reflection, consider how your decisions are influenced by emotion. Are they grounded in empathy, or do they arise from fear? As you contemplate this delicate balance, the exploration into the nature of our emotions remains open-ended, inviting you to reflect and engage with the ongoing journey of self-discovery that shapes not only your thoughts, but also the world around you. False cause. Imagine stepping into a vibrant marketplace filled with the scent of spices and the sound of laughter. In the midst of it all, a street performer captivates the crowd, juggling with remarkable skill. As the performer finishes and takes a bow, a huge storm suddenly erupts, drenching everyone in moments. Some people shake their heads in disbelief, muttering, "It's always the same. When he performs, disaster follows." This moment captures a philosophical dilemma known as the false cause fallacy, a critical mistake in reasoning where we mistakenly link two events as cause and effect without substantial evidence. At its heart, the issue of false cause challenges our understanding of correlation versus causation. This distinction is vital in reasoning and perception. Is it not tempting to believe that the rain came as a reaction to the juggler's performance? Such intuitive thoughts can mislead us, leaving us to navigate a world of superstitions and unfounded beliefs if we are not careful. Philosophers like David Hume have urged us to contemplate the intricate dance between events. He argued that our minds often leap to conclusions, crafting causal links without true empirical grounding. When we observe patterns in life, it is all too easy to forge connections based on mere coincidence. Moreover, the concept of the causal fallacy extends beyond rain and performances. It permeates our understanding of history, social issues, and even science. In attributing outcomes to unfounded causes, we risk misunderstanding significant issues, perpetuating stereotypes, and ignoring the complexities inherent in human behavior. In modern-day contexts, consider how social media amplifies these very missteps. Conspiracy theories flourish in click-hungry environments, where correlation is mistaken for causation. Vaccinations cause autism, some exclaim, ignoring the rigorous studies that refute such claims. Here, the false understanding of cause leads not only to misinformation, but to profound ramifications in public health and society. Contrasting perspectives abound. The Humean skepticism regarding causation could be met with an inclination towards optimism in narrative. The philosopher Karl Popper suggested that science progresses through conjecture and refutation, learning and evolving from mistakes. While he acknowledges the pitfalls of false cause reasoning, he also sees personal growth within those missteps, inviting exploration rather than discouraging it. Yet amid these frameworks, we must reflect: can we ever escape the grasp of our own cognitive biases? We all yearn for simplicity in a complex world, often interpreting randomness as purpose. But rather than demonizing ourselves for these errors, can we accept our collective fallibility as a pathway for deeper understanding? As we set the juggler's tale aside, we find ourselves pondering our intersecting lives in an elaborate tapestry, woven with numerous threads of causality and consequence. Each choice, each moment we navigate, weaves in the fabric of our existence. In this story of connections, we realize that mistakes can lead to profound insights. So I invite you, as you move through your day, to remain curious. Where might you be drawing false conclusions? In what areas of your life are you conflating correlation with causation? Allow these reflections to unfold gently, embracing uncertainty as a part of the learning process. And as you contemplate these ideas, remember, wisdom often lies not in arriving at answers, but in the journey of seeking and understanding. Can we learn to cultivate awareness and navigate the intricacies of truth in a world bursting with constant stimulation? The exploration continues, ever inviting and human. Equivocation. Imagine a courtroom. A suspect stands accused of a crime, and the prosecution presents a critical piece of evidence, a voice recording of someone seemingly confessing to the act. But as the defense lawyer digs deeper, they reveal that the phrase "I did it" was taken out of context. What appeared to be a confession was in fact a misunderstood reference to a completely different event. The jury is left wondering, how can language, so crucial to justice, be so easily twisted? This is the essence of equivocation, the use of ambiguous language to mislead or confuse. It raises profound philosophical questions about meaning, truth, and understanding. In our everyday lives, we encounter equivocation in political speeches, advertising, and even in personal conversations. Words can often be manipulated to serve someone's agenda, leading to misunderstandings that can drastically alter the perception of truth. The philosopher Socrates believed that to define something accurately is to grasp its essence. For him, clarity in language was essential to achieving knowledge. Contrarily, modern thinkers like Ludwig Wittgenstein might suggest that the meaning of words is shaped by their use within a language game. He argued that meaning is not fixed, but fluid, dependent on context and intention. This raises the unsettling possibility. Is it possible that equivocation is not merely a flaw, but an inherent characteristic of our language? Consider the contemporary impact of equivocation. In an age of misinformation, the words we choose can sway opinions, alter facts, and influence the masses. When a public figure states that they support the people without specifying which people, one can pause to question: whose interests are truly represented? Is the ambiguity intentional, a rhetorical strategy to avoid accountability, or merely a reflection of our inherently ambiguous realities? The ethical implications are profound. Is it moral to engage in equivocation if the intent is harmless? Or should clarity reign supreme, fostering a culture where honesty prevails? John Stuart Mill, in his utilitarian framework, would urge us to consider the greatest good. Could there be utility in nuanced statements that prevent the harm of misinterpretation? Yet, one might also reflect on Immanuel Kant, who posited the importance of truth as a duty inherent to moral action. Should we strive for a world without the fog of equivocation, where intentions and meanings are unmasked, no matter the consequence? In our personal lives, we too dance with equivocation. A maybe can serve to avoid hurt feelings or maintain harmony. In these instances, are we protecting one another, or is it a disservice wrapped in compassion? Perhaps the answer is found in our own experiences. Consider the last time you felt misunderstood. Were the words flawed, or was the meaning simply malleable, shifting with each listener's interpretation? As we navigate our existence, it's essential to remain mindful of the power words hold, understanding that deep meaning often rests beneath the surface lantern of language. Equivocation invites us on a journey to seek clarity not just in our expressions, but in our very understanding of one another. In this world rich with ambiguity, we are left with a lingering question. How do we reconcile our desire for truth with the complexity of language? Perhaps the real challenge lies in our willingness to explore the spaces between clarity and confusion, embracing the profound subtleties of communication that make us human. As we reflect, we invite you to ponder, in your own life, how does equivocation shape your understanding of truth? Appeal to nature. Imagine for a moment walking through a vibrant forest, sunlight filtering through the leaves, a gentle breeze brushing against your skin. You come across a beautiful array of wildflowers, their vivid colors bursting with life. In that moment, you feel a deep sense of peace and connection to the natural world. Now, consider this thought. If nature epitomizes goodness and purity, does that mean everything natural is inherently better or more morally right? This question leads us to the philosophical concept known as the appeal to nature, a compelling yet complex dilemma that invites reflection on the relationship between nature and ethics. Historically, the appeal to nature argues that what is natural is synonymous with what is good, virtuous, or desirable. From ancient philosophers like Aristotle, who believed that living in accordance with nature was the essence of human flourishing, to romantic thinkers who celebrated the idyllic and untarnished aspects of the natural world, there exists a persistent narrative linking nature with moral superiority. The idea suggests that if something is found in nature, it must be beneficial, while anything artificial or constructed by humanity is viewed with skepticism. Yet consider the poison ivy that flourishes in untamed landscapes. Is it good simply because it exists in the wild? Or think of deadly diseases, natural phenomena that disrupt lives. If we accept the premise that nature is always right, we must grapple with the uncomfortable reality that not everything occurring in the natural world is beneficial to humanity. The philosopher David Hume cautioned against this oversimplification, highlighting that deriving moral values solely from nature overlooks a crucial aspect of human agency and moral reasoning. Today, we find ourselves amid pressing debates around natural versus synthetic interventions in areas like medicine, food production, and environmental stewardship. Some argue against genetically modified organisms, GMOs, claiming that natural foods are preferable. However, the reality is that modern science can provide solutions to food scarcity or enhance nutritional value, benefits that might not occur without human innovation. As philosopher Peter Singer posits, outcomes matter significantly. and ethical discussions should weigh the results rather than lean solely on the allure of what is deemed natural. Moreover, it is essential to recognize the anthropocentric bias woven into the appeal to nature. Often, we equate natural with better based on human experience and desires, disregarding the perspectives of other living beings. Should we not broaden our understanding beyond the confines of human preference and consider the ecological balance? This perspective invites us to ask whether there is an objective better, or if ethical values are inherently subjective. As you ponder the complexities of the appeal to nature, consider, if nature is not the unfailing criterion of virtue, what standards should we use to evaluate moral claims? How do we navigate the interplay between what is natural and what is beneficial for both humanity and the world we inhabit? And when faced with the realities of innovation and progress, how do we reconcile our relationship with nature? Such questions do not yield easy answers, but instead lead us down a path of introspection and inquiry. Perhaps the journey itself, examining our values, seeking balance between nature and human progress, and striving for a deeper understanding of our ethical responsibilities, serves as an essential guide. As you walk through that forest or contemplate the world around you, remember that the dilemmas we face today echo through the very fabric of existence, urging us to embrace inquiry as we navigate the intricacies of what it means to be part of nature. The Gambler's Fallacy. Imagine you're sitting at a roulette table in a dimly lit casino, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The wheel spins, and the ball dances across the numbers, finally landing on red after a streak of black. As the wheel resets, you feel a strange pull, a conviction that red is somehow due to come up again, or that black can't possibly continue its run for much longer. Your mind whispers, surely, the laws of chance mean it's time for red to win again. And so you place your bet. This is the Gambler's Fallacy, a misconception that past events affect the probabilities of independent outcomes. It's a phenomenon that stretches beyond the realm of gambling, inviting us to explore deeper questions about chance, perception, and belief. What does this fallacy reveal about our understanding of randomness and control in our lives? Philosophically, the Gambler's Fallacy challenges us to consider the nature of probability. It prompts us to ask, do past experiences genuinely influence future events, or are they simply artifacts of our human intuition? The mathematician Blaise Pascal once mused about the delicate balance between chance and reason. His work laid the groundwork for probabilities, highlighting that we often fail to appreciate how independent events persist separate from our perceptions. This is starkly illustrated when we connect the fallacy to life outside the casino. Take a series of rainy days. Many might conclude that sunshine is overdue, yet the meteorological reality is indifferent to our sense of fairness. Events, like weather patterns or stock market trends, unfold with their own inherent randomness, resisting our attempts to predict them based on past occurrences. Through the lens of philosophers like David Hume, we can examine how human nature leads us to seek patterns, even when none exist. Hume warned us of the dangers of inductive reasoning. Just because the sun has risen every day does not guarantee it will rise tomorrow. Yet our minds, searching for meaning, latch on to certainty, creating a sense of control in an otherwise chaotic universe. In our modern world, the Gambler's Fallacy seeps into our decision-making processes, whether in financial investments, sports predictions, or relationships. The world is rife with examples of individuals who believe that, by sheer will or intuition, they can bend probabilities to their favor. There's a comforting allure in thinking we can outsmart randomness, but this often leads to poor choices, misguided hopes, and disappointments. As we reflect on the Gambler's Fallacy, we are faced with more than just a statistical error. We confront the human condition itself. The need to believe that patterns exist is deeply woven into our psyche. But what is the cost of this belief? Does it cultivate resilience, or does it encourage denial? Can accepting randomness lead to a more profound sense of peace, or does it instill a fear of meaninglessness? As the wheel spins and the ball rolls through the casino, perhaps the most salient question remains: how do we learn to embrace uncertainty without frantically trying to predict the next outcome? By recognizing the fallacy, we might find freedom, not in the illusion of control, but in understanding the beauty of chance. The path forward invites us to ponder, not just the next bet, but the larger tapestry of life, where randomness and intention weave together. In a world of chance, may we find wisdom in detaching from our desire for certainty and welcoming the fluid dance of possibility. Middle ground. Imagine standing on a bridge, half of it leading to a vibrant city bustling with life, the other half winding away toward a serene yet desolate landscape of mountains and meadows. As you stand there, you contemplate a question that has echoed through the ages. Is it possible to find common ground between contrasting ideas, beliefs, or lifestyles that seem seemingly irreconcilable? This journey into the concept of the middle ground reveals not only the complexities of human understanding, but also the underlying tension between opposing philosophies. On one side, we find the voices of absolutism. Think of the rigid doctrines that tell us what is right and wrong, black and white. Here, philosophers like Immanuel Kant advocate for unwavering moral laws derived from reason. He believed that truth can and should be absolute, governed by a categorical imperative that we must all follow. For them, compromise can feel like a dilution of truth. On the opposing side, we meet the relativists, who argue that morality and truth are shaped by culture and context. Friedrich Nietzsche's idea of perspective suggests that truth varies from one viewpoint to another, leading us to acknowledge the richness of diverse beliefs. This side argues that there is wisdom to be found in the multiplicity of human experiences, that perhaps no single perspective can capture the whole truth. They see value in dialogue and empathy, encouraging us to seek understanding instead of striving for consensus. Yet, where does this clash leave us in our everyday lives? Take, for instance, discussions surrounding social and political issues. Decisions about education, healthcare, or environmental policy often highlight the stark divisions within our society. Absolutists will argue passionately for their cause, while relativists may seek to validate every voice in the conversation, even those that seem fundamentally in opposition. In a world increasingly polarized, the quest for middle ground can feel daunting, even impossible. Yet, consider the peace processes that have occurred when opposing factions come together, be it in the civil rights movements, peace treaties, or even family reconciliations. Compromise often birthed progress. Here we find the work of theorists like John Rawls, who advocated for a veil of ignorance to create fair principles, encouraging us to build a society we would want to be a part of, regardless of where we find ourselves once the veil is lifted. But life rarely provides tidy resolutions. For every effort to bridge divides, there remains the risk that the essence of deeply held beliefs may be compromised. Is the middle ground a refuge of understanding, or is it a perilous space that risks diluting passionate convictions? As you stand on that metaphorical bridge, consider the emotions that arise: apprehension, hope, even fear. The quest for a middle ground is not merely a philosophical dilemma, it's a lived reality. It invites us to reflect on our own positions, to question where we draw our lines in the sand, and to think about how we engage with others who challenge our beliefs. Can we find commonality in our humanity, while also honoring the beautiful complexity of our differences? As you ponder this, remember that the journey toward understanding is an unfolding narrative without definitive answers. The space between opposing views is both a challenge and an invitation, a place to reflect, connect, and grow. How will you navigate the bridge that lies before you? The exploration continues, inviting you to question, listen, and perhaps meet your counterpoint on the other side. Confusing correlation and causation. Imagine a quaint village where every morning the rooster crows, awakening the residents and ushering in the day's activities. Now consider this. If the rooster stopped crowing, would the sun rise on its own? Could one assume that the rooster's crowing causes the dawn? Or is it merely a comforting coincidence that accompanies the light breaking over the horizon? This seemingly simple observation opens a door to a profound philosophical dilemma: the confusion between correlation and causation. At its heart, the interplay between correlation and causation challenges our understanding of how we attribute meaning and significance to the world around us. When we notice two events occurring together, like increased ice cream sales and a rise in temperature, we often leap to conclusions about their relationship. As the philosopher David Hume posited, such causal inferences are deeply embedded in human reasoning. We are wired to seek patterns, forging connections in our quest for understanding. Yet these mental shortcuts can lead us astray. However, not all apparent connections reveal genuine causal relationships. The philosopher Richard Feynman once remarked, "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Feynman's wisdom resonates deeply, reminding us that just because two phenomena coexist does not mean that one produces the other. This isn't just an intellectual exercise, but a daily reality. In medical studies, for example, researchers often find correlations between certain lifestyle choices and health outcomes. Yet, the question remains, does smoking cause lung cancer? Or are there other factors at play, varying from genetics to environmental influences? Contrasting perspectives arise when we dive into the realm of scientific inquiry versus anecdotal evidence. The famed philosopher Karl Popper emphasized the importance of falsifiability in the scientific method, which teaches us the necessity of testing hypotheses rigorously. While correlation may suggest hypotheses, causation demands evidence beyond mere coincidence. We are reminded of the spurious relationship between the number of pirates and global temperatures. As pirate numbers decreased, temperatures seemed to rise. This humorous example illustrates the absurdity of mistaking correlation for causation. In today's interconnected world, where information flows like water, the pitfalls of this confusion are exacerbated. Social media platforms abound with popular fallacies that propagate misconceptions, threatening our capacity for critical thinking. Consider the claim that declining ice cream sales result in higher rates of violent crime. While both may trend together during warmer months, diving deeper might reveal that a third variable, seasonality, might be driving both trends rather than a direct relationship. As we navigate these philosophical waters, it becomes clear that the distinction between correlation and causation shapes our decision-making, beliefs, and moral reasoning. When we consider topics like climate change, public health policies, or social injustices, the implications of confusing these concepts can be profound. Policies informed by misunderstanding may lead to ineffective or detrimental outcomes, rooting decision-making in erroneous assumptions. So where does this leave us? As you contemplate this dilemma, reflect on the intricacies of causality in your day-to-day life. How often do you find yourself attributing meaning to coincidental events? And how might this influence your perceptions, for better or for worse? In your quiet moments, let these thoughts sink in. Perhaps the path to clarity lies not just in seeking connections, but in embracing the uncertainty that accompanies nearly every correlation we encounter. After all, may we never forget, appearances can be deceiving, and often the deeper truths remain tantalizingly just out of reach. No true Scotsman. Imagine, if you will, a heated discussion among friends enjoying an afternoon tea. The topic of conversation turns to national identity, specifically what it means to be a true Scotsman. One friend, feeling proud of his heritage, states, "No Scotsman would act in such a selfish way," to which another counters, pointing to a well-known Scotsman who has indeed behaved selfishly. In a moment of fervent defense, the first friend retorts, "Well, no true Scotsman would do that." And there it is, the no true Scotsman fallacy, a subtle, often unintentional shift in the definition. This philosophical dilemma beckons us to consider the nature of identity and belonging. What does it mean to be part of a group? And more perplexingly, how do we decide who is or isn't included? Philosophers like Karl Popper pointed out the importance of falsifiability in defining concepts. Yet, when identities are invoked, a slippery slope arises where the criteria for membership shift to exclude dissenters, leaving the discussion circular and self-referential. In contrast, we could lean into a more inclusive understanding of identity. Perhaps to be a Scotsman, or a member of any group, for that matter, does not demand adherence to a narrow set of criteria. Such an approach resonates with the philosophies of existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre, who suggested that identity is an ongoing project created through choices and actions rather than preordained definitions. Yet when faced with a dilemma over identity, our instinct often leans towards exclusion, an urge to reinforce boundaries and minimize cognitive dissonance. This brings us to the contemporary relevance of the no true Scotsman fallacy. Consider political discourse today. Many individuals passionately assert distinct ideals that define their party or movement, sometimes leading them to dismiss dissenting voices. When one group claims to represent true values, they might sidestep complex realities or diverse perspectives in a quest for ideological purity. The danger, of course, is that such tactics not only undermine genuine dialogue, but also dilute the shared humanity that binds us. Yet the contemplation of collective identity need not lead us down a path of exclusion. Feminism, for instance, is rich with diverse viewpoints that highlight different experiences and narratives. Embracing intersectionality, as champions like Kimberly Crenshaw suggest, calls for understanding and valuing varied identities within broader movements, a vital step toward true inclusivity. As you ponder these ideas, consider your own experiences. What identities do you hold dear? Are there moments where you rush to define others excessively or expel them from your understanding of a group you cherish? The no true Scotsman fallacy invites us to reflect deeply on our definitions of belonging. Identity is perhaps less about who is inside the circle and more about recognizing what we share across perceived divides. As our conversation draws to a close, let us remain open to the complexities that shape our identities and the dialogue around them. The question lingers: what would happen if we embraced a more expansive vision of belonging, acknowledging that every voice, true or not, has a role to play in the beautiful tapestry of human experience. Personal incredulity. Imagine you find yourself standing on the edge of a vast, swirling sea, its depths filled with mysteries and truths far beyond your understanding. As you gaze into the tumultuous waves, a thought arises. Can everything we perceive really be true? If something appears implausible or beyond our grasp, does that render it untrue? This inner conflict is not merely a fleeting thought, but a fundamental challenge we all encounter. Personal incredulity. Personal incredulity arises when we face ideas or concepts that seem improbable or unfathomable. It whispers in our ears, urging us to dismiss anything that appears too far removed from our lived experiences. For instance, the concept of infinite universes or advanced technologies that manipulate reality can elicit skepticism. Philosophers throughout history have grappled with this dilemma, each presenting unique perspectives. David Hume, a modern philosopher, emphasized the role of empirical evidence. He argued that for a belief to be justified, it must be supported by experience and observation. To Hume, ideas that defy our understanding are often dismissed as absurd because our instincts resist them. The fundamental challenge lies in reconciling human reason with the overwhelming vastness and complexity of existence. Contrastingly, Immanuel Kant introduced a notion that transcends mere skepticism. He suggested that our understanding is limited by the confines of human perception. According to Kant, we may struggle to grasp concepts such as the sublime or the infinite because they exceed our cognitive barriers. Perhaps it is not that these ideas are untrue, but that our minds are not equipped to comprehend them fully. In this light, personal incredulity becomes an invitation to expand our thoughts rather than a definitive rejection. In today's world, the phenomenon of personal incredulity has an especially poignant relevance. The rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and quantum physics often spark disbelief. Many marvel at the idea of machines that learn, adapt, or even create art and music. The skepticism towards such advancements raises a vital question. How do we grapple with realities that seem too fantastical or complex when we are already tethered to our existing belief systems? This leads us to consider the nature of knowledge itself. Are we to constrict our understanding only to what feels plausible, or should we embrace the wonder of the unknown, even if it stretches our cognitive and emotional boundaries? The philosopher Karl Popper posited that science evolves through bold conjectures and rigorous refutations, advocating that doubt is a vital component of knowledge. Here, personal incredulity does not serve as a barrier, but rather as a catalyst for inquiry and exploration. As you stand on that shore, the undulating waves continue to swell. Each wave embodies a question, carrying with it the potential for revelation and transformation. Perhaps personal incredulity is not merely an obstacle to overcome, but a gentle reminder. It urges us to remain open, to ask questions, and to allow the vastness of imagination to challenge the limits of our understanding. Thus we arrive at an open-ended reflection. In a world brimming with complexity, can we allow ourselves the grace of uncertainty? Can incredulity guide us toward deeper inquiry rather than compel us to retreat into skepticism? As we ponder these questions, we engage in a journey toward understanding, inviting a dialogue that moves beyond absolutes and embraces the beautiful ambiguity of existence. Loaded question. Imagine sitting in a small, cozy cafe where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee fills the air. A friend leans in, curiosity gleaming in their eyes, and asks you, Have you stopped cheating on your partner? In that moment, you feel the weight of the question settle upon you. It's not merely a query about your relationship status. It implies guilt and presumes wrongdoing, leaving you to grapple with its shadows. This is the essence of a loaded question, a seemingly simple inquiry laden with assumptions that can skew the truth. At the heart of a loaded question lies an intricate web of logical and ethical dilemmas. When a question presupposes a particular answer, the respondent is caught between defending a premise they may not even accept. The philosopher John Searle might argue that our ability to communicate ideas is compromised when the foundations of our discourse are warped by such assumptions. When we respond, we are tasked with navigating not just the question itself, but also the implicit judgments and implications it carries. Think about how this manifests in our daily lives. In politics, for instance, loaded questions can distort public discourse. A politician might ask, "Why do you support a policy that harms the vulnerable?" The phrasing creates a moral landscape where supporting the policy seems unjustifiable, forcing opponents into a defensive position rather than allowing for nuanced debate. Here, the loaded question serves not as a pathway to understanding, but as a rhetorical weapon wielded to silence dissent. Yet, if we turn to the realm of ethics, we might consider the perspectives of different philosophers. Take Immanuel Kant, who believed in the inherent dignity of rational agents. He might argue that loaded questions undermine our autonomy. They strip individuals of their agency by forcing them into positions that do not reflect their truth. Alternatively, a consequentialist view, represented by utilitarian thinkers like John Stuart Mill, may argue that the implications of loaded questions could sometimes lead to greater overall harm, especially if they stifle genuine conversation. In modern contexts, loaded questions proliferate in social media discourse. A simple tweet can explode with assumptions that lead to public shaming or fierce debate, often sidestepping the complexity of the issues at hand. Each loaded question exchanged becomes an opportunity not for connection, but for division, a phenomenon echoed in the writings of philosophers like Hannah Arendt, who warned of the dangers of losing our ability to engage in meaningful dialogue. As you sit in that cafe, contemplating the weight of the loaded question posed by your friend, take a moment to reflect on your own life. Have you encountered similar questions that forced you into uncomfortable positions? What hidden assumptions have you seen at play in your conversations? The loaded question reminds us that our inquiries can be as revealing as the answers we provide. Perhaps the next time you find yourself asking or responding to a question, pause to consider, what lies beneath the surface? What assumptions are we buying into, and how do they shape our understanding of ourselves and each other? As we continue this introspective journey, let us cultivate the art of questioning, a practice grounded not only in curiosity, but in compassion and understanding, leaving room for truth to emerge without the burdens of loaded assumptions. The burden of proof. Imagine standing in a dimly lit room, poring over a strange, ancient manuscript that claims a hidden truth about the universe. A friend argues passionately for its validity, presenting fascinating theories and seemingly compelling evidence. You're intrigued, yet wearily aware. If you are to explore this thought further, who should bear the weight of proving its significance? Is it your responsibility to disprove this concept, or does it lie on your friend who asserts such a bold claim? This scenario introduces us to the philosophical dilemma known as the burden of proof, a notion fundamental not only to epistemology, but also to everyday discourse. At its core, the burden of proof determines who must offer support for a claim and how our beliefs shape the expectations we place on one another in discussions of truth. Philosophers like Hume and Kant have long explored these themes, each shedding light on our shared human experience of belief and skepticism. Hume argued from an empirical standpoint, suggesting that claims must be substantiated by observable evidence. On the other hand, Immanuel Kant introduced the idea that our understanding of knowledge is limited by our sensory experiences, inviting us to reflect upon how we derive meaning from the world around us. These distinct perspectives evoke the question, do we truly have a responsibility to prove our beliefs, or can we merely accept them based on faith or intuition? In modern discourse, particularly within realms like science, law, and philosophy, the burden of proof plays a critical role. In a court of law, for instance, it leans heavily on the prosecution to establish guilt. The presumption of innocence demands that statements of wrongdoing remain unproven until evidence compellingly demonstrates otherwise. This fairness principle protects individuals from undue accusations, yet raises complex questions about accountability. However, expanding beyond legal frameworks, the burden of proof can sometimes result in dogmatism, where individuals become reluctant to challenge prevailing beliefs. Consider the ongoing debates surrounding climate change or vaccination. When advocates for such scientific consensus face resistance, they often find themselves defending well-accepted ideas instead of asking their challengers for convincing counter-arguments. Is it fair to impose the burden of proof on those who argue for the prevailing views? Or should those who deny scientifically supported claims be called to justify their skepticism? Yet another layer arises in our digital age, where misinformation proliferates rapidly. Claims shot across social media can change perspectives overnight, creating the need for discernment. Those who spread falsehoods may escape scrutiny, leaving it to others to disprove insensible ideas. Is the heavy lifting falling on individuals to sift through this din of information, or should we hold those making the more outrageous claims responsible for substantiation? Perhaps reflecting on the burden of proof leads us to question not only responsibility, but our own approach to belief. Why do we quickly latch onto ideas and demands that we have no evidence for? As we weigh these philosophical inquiries in our lives, we might find that examining who carries the burden of proof influences how we construct and challenge our beliefs. As you ponder these intricate layers, consider, where do you place your trust, and how might you responsibly navigate the burdens of proof in your own philosophies? In a world of uncertainty, the quest for truth continues, an invitation for each of us to reflect on the nature of belief itself, forever inviting us to explore, question, and seek understanding in the shadows of existence. Ambiguity. A fog envelops a small village nestled between two mountains. One morning, the villagers awaken to find the horizon obscured and paths indistinguishable. As they prepare for the day, they face a decision. Should they venture into the unknown fog or stay safely within the confines of familiarity? This dilemma leads them to profound questions. Does the uncertainty of the fog symbolize the unpredictable nature of existence? Can comfort be found in ambiguity, or does clarity hold greater value in guiding our lives? Ambiguity, as it weaves through our daily existence, often invites discomfort. Take, for example, the classic philosophical predicament known as the ship of Theseus, which ponders whether an object that has had all its components replaced remains fundamentally the same object. If pieces of a ship are gradually replaced, at what point does it become a different ship, if ever? This conundrum speaks not only to identity, but also to the essence of change itself. The philosopher Heraclitus famously declared that change is the only constant, suggesting that perhaps ambiguity is inherent to our understanding of identity and existence. In contrast, the existentialist perspective, offered by thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, embraces ambiguity as an opportunity for human freedom. For Sartre, to exist in a world without predetermined essence is to accept the weight of one's choices. Ambiguity allows individuals to forge their paths, creating meaning from their actions. This creates a tension between the desire for security, which seeks clear definitions and boundaries, and the existential desire to embrace the unknown. Ambiguity is not merely an abstract philosophical concept, but has profound, real-world implications. In a society saturated with contradictory information, individuals often grapple with choices that lack clear outcomes, like choosing a career or determining relationships. The politics of identity, with fluid concepts of gender and belonging, reflect the complexities of this ambiguity. As societal norms evolve, individuals may face the discomfort of uncertainty, yet this very ambiguity can also foster acceptance and understanding in a rapidly changing world. Yet there lies a tension here. Some philosophers, like Immanuel Kant, argue for the importance of clarity and moral absolutes. In his view, ambiguity can lead to moral relativism, where the distinction between right and wrong blurs. For Kant, the categorical imperative, acting according to principles that could be universally applied, provides a framework that favors clarity over ambiguity in ethical considerations. So, as we navigate the fog of our own lives, we are invited to reflect: does embracing ambiguity enrich our experiences or leave us feeling lost? The tension between the desire for certainty and the acceptance of uncertainty is a personal journey we each undertake. In the end, perhaps ambiguity is not merely a challenge to overcome, but a fundamental aspect of the human experience, urging us to explore, to question, and to derive meaning from the very uncertainties that shape our lives. How do we reconcile the drive for clarity with the beauty of the ambiguous in our lives? In a world where certainty feels increasingly elusive, this question invites us to ponder what it means to embrace the ambiguity of existence and find solace within it. Composition division. Imagine you are gazing into a vast desert. In the distance, a solitary mountain stands against the horizon. As you walk closer, the mountain seems like a whole, majestic and secure. But as you reach its base, you discover a multitude of distinct layers, each rock and mineral telling a story, each stratum a fragment of time. And now, slowing your breath, you begin to reflect on a profound question. Does understanding this mountain as a composed entity enhance or diminish our appreciation of its beauty? This introspection leads us to the philosophical dilemma of composition and division, an exploration of how we relate to wholes and their parts. When we look at something as a whole, we often sense its unity, its beauty, its purpose. Yet when we delve deeper into its composition, we may see complexities that alter our perspective. Does the individual impressive stone erode the mountain's grandeur, or does it enrich it by adding layers of meaning? Philosophers like Aristotle believed in a holistic perspective. He famously emphasized the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This perspective suggests that an understanding of the entire entity transcends its individual components. In straightforward terms, a symphony is not merely a collection of notes. Its beauty arises from the harmonious interplay of each instrument, the expressive paradoxes they create in unison. Contrastingly, there are voices, like those of philosophers such as Immanuel Kant, who remind us of the intricate nature of division. Kant proposes that our understanding of objects comes from analyzing their parts. Without grasping the individual elements, a symphony's nuances, or the mountain stones, our understanding remains superficial. By breaking down the whole into its fundamentals, we uncover insights that may otherwise remain hidden. As you ponder this tension between composition and division, consider modern implications. In the world of social justice, for example, we often speak of communities as cohesive wholes, yet the reality is often layered with diverse identities, experiences, and histories. By examining the individual narratives within the community, we may find more profound empathy and understanding, perhaps revealing patterns of oppression that a simplistic view would obscure. Yet these explorations can lead us into confusion. Should we focus solely on the whole to grasp the essence of beauty, justice, or truth? Or should we dissect everything to understand the essential components? This dichotomy provokes further questions. What does it mean to appreciate an artwork as a whole while also recognizing the brushstrokes and colors that form it? Can we love a community fully, yet also honor each individual story within it? Ultimately, the dilemma of composition and division invites us into an ongoing dialogue about how we perceive and engage with the world. It asks us to reflect deeply on our relationships with wholeness and fragmentation. In doing so, we may find that the answers are not binary, but rather a delicate weave, where the beauty of the mountain derives from both its singularity and its intricate formations. As you continue this journey, remember that your insights into the interplay of parts and wholes are still unfolding, inviting you to ponder deeper mysteries yet to be revealed. A man recalls a heartwarming story of his grandmother, who, despite having no formal education, managed to cultivate a stunning garden filled with vibrant flowers and delicious vegetables. Each year, her garden flourished, providing the family not only nourishment, but also a sense of joy and connection. Inspired by her, the man decides to try his hand at gardening. However, despite his diligent efforts and access to modern gardening techniques, his plants fail to thrive. Frustrated, he wonders, has knowledge alone made him forget the wisdom that comes from personal experience? This is the dilemma surrounding anecdotal evidence, a philosophical conundrum that questions the validity of personal stories in the face of broader evidence. We often turn to anecdotes, those intimate stories of individual experience, to make sense of the world, especially when grappling with uncertainties. As with the man's gardening journey, these narratives can feel remarkably convincing. They possess an innate power to evoke emotion and instill belief. Philosophers like David Hume have acknowledged the limitations of anecdotal evidence, suggesting that personal stories, while compelling, may fall short of universal truth. Hume implored us to question the reliability of our senses and individual experiences, understanding that they might lead us to erroneous conclusions if we rely on them solely. Though the man's grandmother's success offers an inspiring tale, can we generalize about gardening effectiveness based solely on his personal experience? However, opposing views exist. Some argue that anecdotes serve as powerful tools to introduce complex issues, allowing us to grasp abstract concepts more clearly. Think about how social movements often rely on personal stories, testimonials shared by individuals, to communicate the real human impact of policies or injustices. These narratives create empathy and serve to bridge the gap between impersonal statistics and genuine understanding. Philosophers like Hannah Arendt emphasize the importance of individual experiences in ethical discussions, arguing that personal narratives can illuminate the human condition in ways aggregated data cannot. In the modern world, where information is abundant, anecdotal evidence plays a significant role in shaping public opinion. Consider health trends fueled by personal stories shared online. Testimonials about diets, wellness remedies, or lifestyles often spread like wildfire. Yet such narratives can lead to the rise of misinformation. The man may look at his grandmother's garden and be inspired to share her secrets with others. But will those secrets prove effective across all contexts and environments? Can a single anecdote stand against meticulously conducted research? This brings us back to the importance of balance. We need to remember the limitations of our personal experiences, while also valuing the richness they offer in understanding our shared humanity. Perhaps the question isn't whether anecdotal evidence can stand on its own, but rather how it interacts with scientific reasoning and empirical data in informing our viewpoints. As we reflect on the man's gardening journey, we are left pondering, what role should anecdotal evidence play in our lives? How do we weigh personal stories against statistical evidence? In questioning how we navigate this landscape, may we cultivate a more compassionate and nuanced understanding of the world, one that acknowledges the importance of the individual while also seeking out the broader truths that govern our existence. Texas Sharpshooter. Imagine a marksman standing confidently at a target. He fires a flurry of bullets, missing the bullseye each time. Yet, after his shooting spree, he takes a can of paint and draws a perfect circle around a cluster of his stray shots, declaring, "I hit the target." This scenario, though seemingly comical, encapsulates a profound philosophical dilemma known as the Texas Sharpshooter Fallacy, a concept that encourages us to explore the ways we selectively highlight information to confirm our biases. In our journey through life, we often encounter scenarios where we must navigate data and evidence. This fallacy reminds us of the tendency to focus on patterns and outcomes that suit our preconceptions, while ignoring the broader landscape of reality. Evokes the shared human experience of storytelling, where we might cherry-pick evidence to fit a narrative that supports our beliefs. For instance, take someone who argues that a particular diet must be effective, citing various successful testimonials, while disregarding the numerous failures. This selective perception can lead to misguided conclusions, one mark on a target that misrepresents a larger, more complex truth. Philosophers like Karl Popper have emphasized the importance of falsifiability in scientific theories, which directly connects here. When we fail to consider evidence that contradicts our beliefs, we deviate from a true scientific mindset, clouding our understanding and ultimately hindering growth. The Texas Sharpshooter Fallacy argues that this delusion can extend beyond individual beliefs, influencing societal dialogues about pressing issues such as climate change, politics, or public health. In the age of information overload, where data is abundant, yet context is often lost, this fallacy serves as a cautionary tale about the narratives we construct. Yet, there is a contrasting perspective that highlights the human proclivity for pattern recognition. Cognitive scientists argue that our brain is hardwired to seek connections and draw conclusions based on available information, a necessary adaptation for survival. Recognizing these patterns helps us navigate our environment, but also opens up the possibility of confirmation bias and oversimplification. What then is the balance? How can we cultivate an awareness of the Texas Sharpshooter fallacy while still engaging in rich and meaningful discourse? Modern tools, such as data analytics and critical thinking, empower us to dissect narratives more thoughtfully. As we explore information in interpersonal relationships or public discussions, we encourage a dialogue that respects diverse viewpoints rather than rushed conclusions. The virtue of skepticism may serve as a shield against the perils of oversimplification, ultimately fostering deeper understanding rather than division. As we sit with the Texas Sharpshooter fallacy, we find ourselves reflecting: in what ways do we paint our own circles around evidence? Are we courageous enough to question our conclusions, inviting dissenting opinions to the conversation? The shadows of our biases may not vanish, but the pursuit of clarity will lead us further down the path of truth. In the end, the Texas Sharpshooter invites us into an open-ended inquiry. Perhaps the journey lies in recognizing that our curiosities, beliefs, and preconceptions are in constant dialogue, an evolving process that challenges us to embrace the complexity of the human experience. How do we shape our understanding amidst the chaos? Appeal to tradition. Imagine a small village nestled in a serene valley, where every Sunday, generations gather to participate in a ritual as old as the village itself. The same songs are sung, the same prayers are recited, and the time-honored dishes are served. The elders speak of tradition with a sense of reverence, while the youth sometimes shift uncomfortably, wondering if the customs they inherit are truly the best ways to live and connect. What if one of these young villagers felt compelled to challenge the old ways? Would they be seen as a heretic or a visionary? This dilemma introduces us to the concept of appeal to tradition, a logical fallacy where it is argued that something is inherently good, right, or acceptable simply because it has been done for generations. We often hear phrases like, "This is how we've always done it," as if history itself gives unquestionable authority to our choices. Yet, does longevity in practice equate to virtue? Are there not traditions that perpetuate harmful norms, just as there are practices that evolve for the better? Philosopher Edmund Burke viewed tradition as a repository of wisdom, seeing social customs and conventions as a way to cultivate civil society. He believed that customs carry the weight of history, offering stability and a sense of belonging. In contrast, Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau emphasized rationality and progress, arguing that just because something is traditional does not mean it is just or beneficial. They urged humanity to question assumptions and seek knowledge unfettered by the chains of antiquity. In our modern society, this philosophical tension plays out in myriad ways. Consider debates surrounding education. Should we preserve old teaching methods simply because they have been used for decades? Or should we adopt new approaches driven by contemporary understanding of cognitive science? Similarly, in environmental matters, do time-honored farming techniques trump innovative, sustainable practices that could enhance our planet's health? The clash reveals how the appeal to tradition can blind us to necessary progress. However, it's essential to appreciate the calm comforts found in tradition. For many, rituals provide rhythm to life, anchoring them in a world that can sometimes feel chaotic. Celebrating cultural heritage fosters community, evoking feelings of nostalgia that soothe the spirit. As philosopher George Santayana wisely noted, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Should we then discard tradition altogether or adapt it based on the lessons learned from history? Navigating these waters is an intricate dance. Each generation must decide which aspects of tradition to carry forward and which to challenge. As we reflect on our own lives, we might ask, what traditions do we hold dear and why? Are they rooted in genuine shared meaning or inherited unexamined? Ultimately, the appeal to tradition invites a profound engagement with our choices, one that honors the past while allowing space for dialogue, reflection, and growth. As the villagers finish their Sunday gathering and begin to disperse, a single question lingers in the air, inviting contemplation. In our quest for meaning and identity, how do we decide what to uphold and what to transform, leaving us with the resonance of tradition that sings through time? The Fallacy Fallacy. Imagine you're engaged in a rigorous debate about whether a new policy should be implemented in your community. A passionate advocate against the policy argues, "This idea is flawed because it doesn't address the real issue at hand." This argument sounds compelling, but then a voice from the audience interrupts, declaring, "You're committing the fallacy fallacy. Just because your argument has a flaw doesn't mean the policy itself is bad." In that moment, the conversation takes a turn away from the content of the debate and shifts into a labyrinth of logic. This scene illustrates the philosophical dilemma of the fallacy fallacy, the idea that if someone makes an argument with a logical fallacy, their conclusion must also be false. But is this always true? Should we discount the validity of an idea solely based on the perceived weakness of the arguments supporting it? To explore this conundrum, let's delve into contrasting views. On one hand, we have logicians like Aristotle, who emphasize the importance of sound reasoning. For Aristotle, the means of arriving at a conclusion significantly matter. Without sound premises, any argument risks leading us astray. Yet, this introduces a complexity. Does the fallacy of an argument invalidate the truth of the claim it supports? Consider a more contemporary perspective from philosophers like Richard Whately, who warned against the misuse of fallacies, pointing out that a fallacious argument can still lead to a true conclusion. For instance, if someone advocates against smoking by citing a misinterpretation of statistics, the facts about smoking's dangers remain unchanged. This side of the debate beckons us to ponder whether we should evaluate ideas in isolation from the arguments presented. This dilemma resonates strongly in our current age of information. With discussions around climate change, social justice, or public health flooding our news feeds, we often encounter arguments riddled with fallacies. Strawman arguments, ad hominems, and cherry-picked data are just a few. As we move through this maze, it can be tempting to dismiss entire viewpoints based on their presentation. We might say, if the argument is flawed, then the belief must be flawed. But this reflexive reaction mirrors a deeper misconception. Critics of the fallacy fallacy remind us that there exists a distinction between the quality of an argument and the validity of its conclusion. In reality, life is messy, and ideas can be true even when presented poorly. The challenge lies in our responsibility as thinkers and communicators to pursue truth while remaining vigilant against the lure of logical oversimplifications. So as we sit in quiet contemplation, whether reflecting on community policies, political debates, or even personal decisions, perhaps we should ask ourselves, how often do we fall into the trap of the fallacy fallacy? Do we judge ideas based solely on their flawed representation, rather than exploring their intrinsic validity? The fallacy fallacy invites an introspective journey through the landscapes of logic and belief. It nudges us to examine our own biases, urging us to discern between argumentation and truth. In a world rife with debate, the question lingers: how do we seek truth beyond flawed arguments, and at what cost might we ignore the foundations of ideas that could resonate deeply with our understanding? As we ponder these questions, we open ourselves to a more nuanced exploration of thought, a space where clarity and complexity can coexist. The fallacy of sunk costs. Imagine for a moment that you have invested countless hours and significant financial resources into restoring an old classic car. After months of hard work and learning about the intricate mechanics of engines and rust repair, you encounter relentless setbacks. The engine fails to turn over, parts are missing, and costs continue to climb. Yet, despite these challenges, you feel compelled to keep pouring your time and money into the project. After all, you've already invested so much. How could you possibly walk away now? This scenario unravels the fallacy of sunk costs, a cognitive bias that traps many of us in the decision-making process. At the heart of this fallacy lies the emotional toll of past losses. We often let our previous investments cloud our judgment, leading us to believe that more resources, time, effort, or money will somehow validate our earlier choices. Philosopher Daniel Kahneman has noted that humans are naturally loss-averse. We feel losses more deeply than we celebrate gains. This can cause us to ignore future consequences and instead focus solely on what we have already committed. Cognitively, the concept resonates with sentiments found in existential philosophy. Think of Soren Kierkegaard, who emphasized the importance of choosing authentically, recognizing the burdens of decisions we make. To let the weight of past choices dictate our current actions often leads us away from authenticity and true self-awareness. Alternatively, the Stoics might remind us that what has passed is beyond our control. Clinging to past investments, we drown ourselves in frustration rather than seeking clarity and new opportunities. In contemporary life, the sunk cost fallacy can be seen in various contexts. A failing business that continues to invest in a flawed product. A failing relationship where one partner hesitates to leave because of shared experiences, or even our aversion to canceling subscriptions for services we no longer use, yet continue to pay for. In each case, rational analysis can often be lost in the mire of emotional attachment to what has been invested. Consider a popular maxim, often quoted in discussions of this fallacy: don't throw good money after bad. It reminds us to assess our investments critically, to ask ourselves whether the costs of continuing outweigh the value we hope to recuperate. Yet, even with that guide, the emotions weave a complex narrative, and letting go isn't merely a financial decision, it's deeply personal. But what if we were to lean into the discomfort of relinquishing our sunk costs? What if, instead, we could approach these choices with a perspective of learning and growth, allowing ourselves the grace to move forward, even if that means accepting past miscalculations? As you reflect on your own life, consider where the sunk cost fallacy might be subtly guiding your decisions. Have there been moments where fear of loss held you captive, blinding you to new opportunities? These questions invite us to explore further, to reevaluate what we let define our choices, to embrace a future richer than the weight of our past. The journey continues from here, unfurling wide possibilities, a gentle reminder that each moment forward carries its unique potential. Appeal to popularity. Imagine walking into a room filled with people, each passionately discussing the latest social media trend. A new dance challenge has gone viral, attracting millions of participants worldwide. As you observe, You notice there's a growing sense of excitement and joy among the crowd. But then a thought crosses your mind. Just because everyone is doing this dance, does that make it worthwhile? In fact, does popularity guarantee that something is good, true, or valuable? This is the philosophical dilemma of the appeal to popularity, also known as argumentum ad populum. It invites us to reflect on how societal trends can shape our beliefs and values, often blurring the line between personal conviction and collective consensus. Throughout history, philosophers have cautioned against allowing majority opinion to dictate truth. Socrates famously challenged the Athenian citizens who followed the crowd without questioning their assumptions, while John Stuart Mill emphasized the importance of individual thought amidst societal pressures. Yet, this dilemma raises a profound question in our contemporary landscape. In an age dominated by social media, where trends shift in the blink of an eye, how should we navigate the cacophony of popular opinion? For instance, should we embrace every viral fad, trusting it to lead us towards happiness and fulfillment simply because it has captured the attention of many? Or should we consider deeper truths about what brings meaning to our lives, rather than merely following the masses? The contrast in perspectives is enlightening. On one hand, proponents of democracy may argue that the popular will reflects shared values and common good. In the realm of ethics, some propose a consequentialist viewpoint, suggesting that if something brings widespread joy, then it must possess inherent value. However, this approach raises concerns, especially when we observe how trends can sometimes propagate harm or reinforce negative behaviors. From destructive challenges to questionable practices, popularity can obscure profound moral questions. Additionally, we must consider the influence of cognitive biases. The confirmation bias leads us to seek information aligning with popular beliefs, and social proof often convinces us that if many others endorse an idea, it must hold merit. Yet, history reveals cautionary tales where majority opinion was tragically misguided. Think of instances like groupthink in the corporate world, or even the infamous Milgram experiments on obedience. But here lies the crux. Just because something is popular does not inherently affirm its goodness or accuracy. It can often muddle our judgment. An open-ended reflection emerges. How do we discern personal truth amidst a chorus of voices clamoring for our attention? Is it enough to rely on the collective echo, or must we cultivate the courage to question prevalent narratives in our lives? As we ponder this dilemma, we invite you to contemplate your relationship to popularity. When faced with the allure of the crowd, how do you choose to engage with the world around you? In navigating this intricate web of influence, may we find a balance between embracing community and nurturing our own authentic paths. Perhaps the journey towards understanding lies not in the popularity of our decisions, but in the thoughtful, reflective heart guiding those choices. False analogy. Consider a scenario where two people are arguing for the right to express their opinions freely. One person insists that freedom of speech is essential, comparing it to the freedom of a bird to fly wherever it chooses. The other counters, claiming that unrestricted speech is like allowing a child to play with fire, dangerous and potentially harmful. Both present their cases with conviction, yet, upon closer inspection, we might ask, are these comparisons truly valid? Are they elucidating or obscuring the complexities of freedom and responsibility? This is the essence of the concept of false analogy, a logical fallacy where two subjects are compared based on superficial similarities while ignoring significant differences. The implications of false analogies extend far beyond simple debates. They can shape public opinion, influence policy decisions, and even define ethical boundaries. Yet, why does this matter in our philosophical explorations? Let us delve into the rich tapestry of philosophical thought. Aristotle famously emphasized the importance of a rational argument, yet he recognized that human reasoning is often clouded by feelings and biases. When individuals present false analogies, they may unintentionally lead others away from the truth. For instance, the analogy comparing speech to a bird implies absolute freedom without acknowledging the weight of social responsibility. In contrast, equating it with fire implies complete restriction, igniting fear without addressing the nuance of moral discourse. Modern philosophers like John Stuart Mill argued robustly for freedom of expression, declaring it vital for truth-seeking. Yet Mill also recognized the potential harm of ideas if left unchecked. In this tension, one could see the danger of false analogies. They can misrepresent the complexities of freedom, misleading audiences into accepting flawed conclusions without grappling with deeper moral implications. In contemporary society, false analogies might craft narratives in political debates, advertising, and even social media discourse. For example, when one compares climate change denial to the persecution of the Holocaust, the urgency of combating climate issues is emphasized. However, such analogies can trivialize historical trauma, drawing ire rather than fostering understanding. It raises the question, do we pursue clarity and engagement, or do we lean on emotionally charged comparisons that cloud judgment? As we ponder these dilemmas, we begin to see that the act of communication is laden with responsibility. The words we choose, the comparisons we make, echo in the fabric of our society. It invites us, as both speakers and listeners, to exercise critical thinking and discernment when faced with persuasive rhetoric or compelling narratives. In closing, we are left standing amidst a web of ideas, charged with the realization that messages are not always what they seem. The heart of the matter lies not just in our ability to communicate, but in our duty to listen, to filter through analogies, seeking genuine substance beneath the surface. As we journey forward, let us continue to question the comparisons we encounter, seeking the wisdom in distinction rather than allowing ourselves to be swept away by the allure of simplistic parallels. What would our world look like if we embraced a deeper understanding in our conversations? The reflection is yours to hold. Appeal to consequences. Imagine standing at a crossroads of morality, holding two signs that point in starkly different directions. One sign reads, "Choose the path of truth," and the other, "Choose the path of comfort." Can it really be so simple? This dilemma mirrors a particular logical fallacy known as the appeal to consequences, a fascinating yet complex aspect of human reasoning that can influence our beliefs and decisions. At its core, the appeal to consequences suggests that an argument is either true or false based on the outcomes that result from acceptance or rejection of that argument. For example, a person may argue that believing in a just and moral universe is essential because it comforts us, while another may claim that if we accept moral relativism, we risk chaos and moral decay. Both stances invoke the potential consequences of belief, not the validity of the beliefs themselves. Philosophers such as David Hume and Immanuel Kant have grappled with these concepts, each navigating the precarious balance between morality, truth, and the consequences of our thoughts. Hume, for instance, posited that moral reasoning cannot solely rely on the consequences of actions, but must also consider human experience and empathy. On the other hand, Kant emphasized duty and the moral law within, suggesting that what is right or wrong is intrinsic to the action itself, independent of its outcome. This tension becomes palpable in modern-day discussions surrounding ethics in technology and medicine. Consider the advancements in genetic engineering. If scientists propose that editing human DNA could eradicate genetic diseases, should we automatically support this idea because of its potential benefits? Critics argue that accepting this proposition could lead us down a slippery slope, paving the way for eugenics or unforeseen consequences that might harm society. Underlying this dilemma is the age-old question of whether the ends justify the means. Some may argue in support of utilitarianism, as proposed by John Stuart Mill, where the measurement of right and wrong hinges on the greatest good for the greatest number. But does this framework risk overshadowing the intrinsic rights of individuals? By focusing too much on potential outcomes, are we dismissing the fundamental complexities of moral considerations? Yet the appeal to consequences can bind us in iron chains of fear, coercing us into beliefs that may not necessarily hold water. If we accept climate change as true, we must change our comfortable lifestyles, one might assert. This line of thinking can alienate those who might otherwise engage meaningfully with the issue, leading to defensive postures rather than thoughtful discourse. As we navigate this landscape, it becomes clear that the appeal to consequences is a double-edged sword. It invites us to reflect on the outcomes of our beliefs, while simultaneously warning us not to base our convictions solely on them. While consequences can guide our understanding, they should not dictate our moral compass. And so we arrive at an open-ended question that lingers in the air, inviting contemplation. How do we strike a balance between facing the uncomfortable truths of our beliefs and embracing the comforting narratives that shield us from fear? In grappling with this inquiry, we may each find our path toward a more profound understanding of truth, morality, and the choices we make in our lives. The journey is perhaps more important than the destination, beckoning us to remain curious, introspective, and engaged in the exploration of our shared human experience. Cherry picking. Imagine standing in a lush orchard, feasting your eyes on plump, ripe cherries dangling just above your reach. The sun beams down, casting a warm glow over your decision. Pick only the best fruit, leaving the rest behind, or gather a mix of all the cherries, regardless of their quality. This simple scenario, fraught with metaphorical significance, leads us to a deeper philosophical dilemma known as cherry picking, a term that has come to represent the selective use of information, often to support a specific agenda or narrative, while disregarding the inconvenient parts. At its core, cherry picking questions the very nature of truth and knowledge. If we only choose to see and share the perspectives that reinforce our beliefs, are we genuinely seeking understanding? This insular approach to information can be traced back to numerous philosophical discussions, including the skeptical inquiries of René Descartes, who sought certainty in knowledge, and the empirical views of David Hume, who highlighted the importance of experience and evidence. Consider the modern-day implications of cherry-picking, found in arenas such as politics, science, and media. In the political sphere, a politician might emphasize statistics that favor their viewpoint while ignoring data that presents a more nuanced or opposing perspective. This selective storytelling can skew public perception, hindering rational debate. In science, when researchers purposely highlight only certain findings from a study, they risk misleading the public about the reliability and validity of their conclusions. This behavior echoes Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. Should we not treat others with the honesty we would expect in return? Yet can there be justifications for cherry-picking? One might argue that it serves as a form of pragmatism, simplifying complex information to ensure it is received and understood. But therein lies an ethical quandary. If we value truth, does any form of selective representation undermine that principle, even if the intention is to enhance comprehension? Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche challenges the notion of objective truth, suggesting that what we accept as truth is often a reflection of individual bias, molded by experiences, culture, and power dynamics. Thus, would it be more prudent to embrace our perspectives, acknowledging the cherry-picking in ourselves, while striving for a semblance of holistic understanding? As we navigate this complex tapestry of reality, the danger of cherry-picking becomes evident. We risk constructing echo chambers, where understanding is diluted rather than enriched. The more we isolate ourselves in communities that validate our views, the more we stifle discourse and diminish our ability to empathize with others. This selective engagement can lead to polarizations, as the other side becomes a caricature of misrepresentation. Yet, how then do we reconcile our instinct to curate information with the pursuit of a well-rounded comprehension of the world? Perhaps, as we ponder this conundrum, the journey lies in recognizing our biases, consciously seeking out diverse perspectives, and engaging with ideas that challenge us. It is within this openness that a richer understanding may flourish. As you reflect on the cherries in the orchard of knowledge, consider this. What fruits are you choosing to pick? And in contrast, what ripe cherries remain out of reach, ignored, forgotten, or deliberately overlooked? The choice you make has implications not just for your understanding, but for the world around you. There is no definitive answer in this pursuit, but perhaps that is the beauty of philosophy, to engage with the questions that provoke thought and inspire deeper connections. As you wander through the orchard of ideas, may your selections invite curiosity, reflection, and continuous exploration. Argument from silence. Imagine standing in a quiet, empty room where only the echo of your thoughts fills the air. You're surrounded by artifacts of knowledge, books, scrolls, symbols from ancient civilizations. As you read the inscriptions, a troubling question lingers. What happens when silence speaks louder than words? It is here we encounter the philosophical puzzle known as the argument from silence. At its core, the argument from silence suggests that the absence of evidence for a claim is, in itself, a form of evidence against it. Picture a scenario in which a historian attempts to reconstruct the life of a significant figure from the past. The sheer absence of any mention of this person in an era filled with writings and records raises uncomfortable questions about their existence. If the echoes of history fail to acknowledge them, does that imply they were never truly there? Or does absence itself carry meaning, hinting at a deeper narrative? Philosophers such as David Hume and Thomas Paine have grappled with this dilemma, often challenging the assumptions we make about silence. Hume, with his cautious skepticism, would likely advise us that just because history does not record a person's actions, it doesn't necessitate their non-existence. In contrast, Paine might argue that absence in historical narrative does indeed suggest a lack of importance, a voice lost amidst the clamor of human experience. Consider how we perceive silence today. In our modern world, the voices of individuals often remain unheard. The marginalized, the voiceless, and the oppressed may leave no written records, leading one to wonder, do their experiences matter? The argument from silence beckons us to consider broader implications in our pursuit of justice and truth. By overlooking their silence, can we ever truly grasp their realities? Furthermore, the implications of this argument can extend even into scientific inquiry. When researchers observe phenomena for which no explanation can be found, does their silence invalidate the possibility of those phenomena? Karl Popper championed the idea of falsifiability, the notion that one cannot prove a theory true but can prove it false. But when faced with silence, can we know what questions remain unanswered simply because we have yet to find evidence for them? Yet, as we ponder this, we must tread lightly. Silence might not imply absence. It could be that the overlooked narratives are waiting for the right ears to hear them, or for fresh perspectives. Perhaps silence is a canvas where voices are yet to be painted. Could it be that certain truths lie hidden in the spaces between words, waiting to challenge our understanding? As we drift through this thought experiment, we are left with lingering questions. In a world so filled with noise, what stories remain untold? Is a silence truly an absence, or does it beckon us to explore deeper realms of understanding? Perhaps the most enduring lesson here lies in the realization that silence can be as powerful as speech, and that in seeking the voices hidden within the echoing void, we embark on an exploration that stretches far beyond mere presence or absence. As we traverse these philosophical landscapes, let us carry the timeless inquiry forward. What does silence truly say? And in what ways might our willingness to listen reshape our perceptions and understanding of reality? The genetic fallacy. Imagine you're sitting at a cafe, engaged in a lively discussion about the merits of a groundbreaking new theory in physics. Suddenly, someone chimes in, declaring that the theory is utterly flawed because it was proposed by an untrustworthy scientist with a dubious past. With that one remark, the discussion takes a turn. The focus shifts from the theory's actual content to the background of its creator. This scenario encapsulates a pervasive trap in reasoning known as the genetic fallacy. The genetic fallacy occurs when we judge the validity or worth of an argument based on its origin rather than its inherent qualities. In the realm of philosophy, this fallacy raises profound questions about credibility, belief, and the weight we give to authority. The Italian philosopher Giambattista Vico passionately defended the importance of context, emphasizing that knowledge should not be dismissed simply because of its source. This perspective invites contemplation on the dynamic between personal history and intellectual merit. Yet, consider the juxtaposition presented by thinkers like David Hume, who warned of the dangers of allowing personal biases to overshadow rational assessment. Hume understood that while backgrounds can illuminate certain biases, they should not wholly invalidate an argument. A person's life experiences can certainly shape their perspectives, but does that mean their contributions should always be cast aside? In today's world, the implications of the genetic fallacy resonate deeply. We witness heated debates revolving around opinions on climate change, healthcare, or social justice, where the detractors often highlight the speaker's social media history or political affiliations rather than engaging with the arguments presented. In this noisy landscape, discussions frequently devolve into ad hominem attacks, where the messenger becomes the target instead of the message being scrutinized. The debate over the effectiveness of vaccine mandates serves as a poignant example. Instead of focusing on scientific evidence or public health outcomes, individuals sometimes dismiss credible data because it comes from outspoken advocates with polarizing views. As we navigate these discussions, we must ask ourselves about the balance between respecting authority and remaining critical of it. It's a delicate dance. Recognizing that biases exist is essential, yet we must also strive to engage with the content on its merits. Through simply dismantling an argument based on its origin, we risk oversimplifying complex issues and stifling genuine discourse. This inquiry into the genetic fallacy leaves us at a crossroads. Are we prepared to challenge ourselves to separate the validity of ideas from the individuals who propose them? Can we actively listen and engage with the arguments laid before us, regardless of the messengers? Perhaps every dismissal based on origin carries the weight of past grievances, cultural biases, or personal experiences. Ultimately, the genetic fallacy invites us to reflect not just on the validity of information, but on the depth of our own understanding and the complexity of the narratives we weave. As we close this discussion, we are left to ponder: how might our conversations transform if we chose to scrutinize ideas on their own terms, while still recognizing the rich tapestry of human experience that shapes them? The pursuit of truth invites us to ponder these questions thoughtfully, paving the way for more meaningful connections in our quest for understanding. Moralistic fallacy. Imagine a serene forest at dusk, where the fading light creates a gentle interplay of shadows and hues. Picture a world where every natural occurrence aligns with our ethical beliefs, where goodness and virtue manifest in nature itself. Wouldn't it be comforting to think that if something exists, it must be good? If predation and suffering occur, perhaps it's nature's way of teaching a lesson, reminding us of the superiority of compassion over cruelty. This comforting notion touches on what philosophers call the moralistic fallacy. At its core, the moralistic fallacy is the belief that what ought to be dictates what is. If we hold that the world should be a place of kindness and cooperation, we might reject any evidence that contradicts this ideal. Yet, when we delve deeper into the fabric of existence, we often encounter harsh realities. Predatory behaviors in the animal kingdom, natural disasters that wreak havoc, and human sins that shadow history challenge our notions of inherent goodness. Here, the brave voices of philosophers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant remind us that morality often diverges from the empirical world. Hume famously argued that we cannot derive an ought from an is. Just because we wish for a harmonious universe does not mean its nature responds in kind. Nature operates through principles of survival and adaptation, indifferent to human values. In contrast, Kant proposed that morality exists as a rational framework, structured yet often at odds with natural instinct. What do we make of these insights in a world tainted by disasters and ethical dilemmas? Consider contemporary issues that unfold around us. Climate change, species extinction, and social inequities are complex phenomena, not easily reconciled with our moral aspirations. Some argue that viewing these realities through a lens of moralistic fallacy allows us to detach ourselves, leading to inaction and denial. If we persist in viewing the world through idealistic notions, do we risk losing our capacity to confront these pressing challenges? Yet, in a world devoid of absolute goodness, do we not also find an opportunity? Embracing the moral ambiguity of existence can foster resilience. It can empower us to navigate uncertainty and cultivate compassion in the face of suffering. Perhaps the beauty of our humanity lies in our ability to create meaning and moral frameworks that uplift us, despite living in a world that operates by indifferent laws. As we now contemplate the moralistic fallacy, we are invited to reflect. If nature reveals truth outside of our ideals, how do we reconcile our moral aspirations with the world that is? Is our longing for alignment between ethics and existence merely an unfulfilled dream? And what might we gain by accepting the complexity of life, allowing us to bridge the gap between who we are and what ought to be? In this quiet moment of reflection, let us ponder the depth of these questions and the delicate dance between our ideals and the realities that define our shared existence. The journey within is perhaps where we will find the answers that elude us in the world around. Nirvana Fallacy. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, tranquil lake, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the blue sky above. You find yourself pondering a deep question. If perfection is the only acceptable outcome, does that render every effort toward improvement futile? This insatiable quest for an ideal state, where no flaw or imperfection exists, often leads us to the philosophical dilemma known as the Nirvana Fallacy. At its core, the Nirvana Fallacy refers to the tendency to dismiss viable options because they do not achieve a state of absolute perfection. Picture this. A community faces a pressing environmental issue, like pollution. Some propose a series of realistic measures, recycling programs, stricter regulations, and community awareness campaigns that would significantly reduce pollution levels. However, critics might scoff, arguing we should instead aim for the complete elimination of pollution. Anything less is worthless. This mindset, while anchored in the noble desire for a perfect solution, ultimately hinders progress and breeds a sense of despair. In the realm of philosophy, this notion invites scrutiny from varying perspectives. Utilitarian thinkers like John Stuart Mill might argue that efforts to enhance well-being should be celebrated, even if they do not lead to utopia. From a utilitarian standpoint, the goal is not perfection, but maximizing happiness and minimizing suffering. Mill might suggest that a small improvement in a community's environment is preferable to stagnation, because aiming for the unattainable can lead to inaction. Contrasting Mill's view, some may advocate for a more radical approach, invoking the ideas of philosophers like Immanuel Kant, who championed the importance of moral imperatives. Kant could argue that striving for the highest ethical standards is essential, and settling for anything less dilutes our moral duty. Yet even Kant acknowledged the complexities of human nature, recognizing that the ideal may never be fully realized in practice. In today's world, the Nirvana Fallacy reveals its presence in many discussions, from climate change activism to social justice movements. For example, an individual advocating for systemic reform may encounter backlash for not proposing a total overhaul of the system, finding themselves painted as ineffectual or hypocritical if they do not have a flawless blueprint for change. But is it wise to reject gradual progress in favor of unattainable ideals? This dichotomy forces us to consider whether perfectionism serves as a catalyst for meaningful change or a barrier to achievable solutions. As we stand once more at the edge of that serene lake, we contemplate the ripples of our actions. Each tiny ripple, caused by a stone cast into the water, symbolizes the potential for change, no matter how small. It invites us to reflect on our own aspirations and the expectations we set, not only for ourselves, but for society as a whole. Are we so fixated on an ideal world that we overlook the beauty of incremental improvements? The question remains open. In our pursuit of perfection, do we unwittingly sabotage our own efforts? As we navigate the complexities of life, let us gently embrace the imperfections, cherishing the progress we can make while still holding space for the dreams that inspire us. In this tension between idealism and pragmatism, perhaps we find the truest essence of what it means to pursue a better world. Post hoc. Imagine a tranquil garden where butterflies flit among vibrant flowers, and an artist leisurely paints the scene. As the artist adds the final strokes to their canvas, the sun shines brighter and the wind stirs gently. In that moment, a question emerges. Does the brightening sun enhance the painting, or did the act of painting somehow summon the sun's brilliance? This seemingly simple scenario taps into a philosophical conundrum that has perplexed thinkers for centuries: post hoc reasoning. Post hoc, short for post hoc ergo propter hoc, is a Latin phrase meaning after this, therefore because of this. It reflects a logical fallacy where one assumes that because event A precedes event B, A must have caused B. Picture a series of events. You wear your lucky socks, the team wins the game, and you conclude that the socks brought the victory. Here, causation is inferred through temporal sequence rather than true evidence. Philosophically, invoking post hoc reasoning opens a Pandora's box of deeper questions. David Hume, a renowned skeptic, argued that causation cannot be directly observed. We infer it based on patterns of experience. Hume reminds us that our minds habitually connect dots that might not share genuine causal links. But what does this imply about our understanding of the world? Consider the story of the weather and the farmer. If the farmer harvests their crops right after planting them, and then a storm hits, would they conclude that the storm was caused by their haste? It paints a humorous picture, but illustrates a dangerous cognitive bias, one that can lead to misguided beliefs and decisions. Our desire to find order in chaos can distort reality, making the distinction between correlation and causation hazy. In modern society, post hoc reasoning permeates everyday decisions and beliefs. When we hear that a certain diet led to a decrease in health issues, it's easy to latch on to that claim, overlooking other factors like exercise or genetic predispositions. This logical pitfall encourages complacency and can fuel misinformation. Think of how easily conspiracy theories flourish. They often rely on unverified connections, crafting a narrative that feels compelling, albeit false. Yet not all post hoc reasoning is fruitless. It can foster creativity and exploration, leading to hypotheses and scientific inquiries. Take, for example, the early scientific method rooted in observation. Galileo noted that dropping a feather and a stone resulted in different speeds, prompting further investigation into gravity's principles. While flawed conclusions can mislead, they can also spark progress and discovery. This philosophical quandary encourages us to remain vigilant. In our pursuit of understanding, we must distinguish between genuine causation and mere coincidence. As we navigate a world increasingly fraught with complexity, the implications of post hoc reasoning are profound. To what extent do our narratives shape our beliefs, and in what ways do we risk oversimplifying intricate realities? As you reflect on the delicate nature of cause and effect, consider this. How do you discern truth from illusion in your own life? Are you shaping your understanding based on reflective observation, Or are you naively connecting dots that may not exist? The exploration of post hoc reasoning invites you to open your mind, embracing uncertainty while cultivating wisdom in the choices you make. In this dance between inquiry and intuition, perhaps the only certainty is that the search for meaning is a journey with no definitive destination, a symphony of thought eternally unfolding. Circular reasoning. Imagine you find yourself in a quiet library amid rows of books whispering secrets of human thought. You stumble upon an intriguing question. Can we truly trust our reasoning if we rely on assumptions that merely reinforce themselves? This is the essence of circular reasoning, a logical fallacy that invites us to ponder the foundations of our beliefs and judgments. When we engage in circular reasoning, we often unwittingly circle back to our starting point, effectively saying, X is true because X is true. For example, if someone insists that a politician is trustworthy because they have never lied, we might gently question the validity of this conclusion. Is trustworthiness inherently proven by the lack of lies, or might it simply be a rephrasing of the same assertion? In this way, our understanding of trust itself becomes tangled. Many philosophers have grappled with this issue. Aristotle, often celebrated as the father of logic, recognized the importance of solid premises in drawing valid conclusions. He would argue that reasoning ought to flow logically from established truths rather than creating a loop that ultimately leads us back to where we began. On the flip side, thinkers like René Descartes employed a form of circular reasoning in his famous dictum, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. While this thought might provide a grounding for his existence, it invites scrutiny. Does self-awareness alone assure us of our being? In modern times, circular reasoning surfaces in various discussions. Consider the debates surrounding climate change. Some argue that science agrees on the reality of climate change because reputable scientists say it's happening. But does that create a solid foundation for understanding climate issues? Or merely restate the belief many already hold? Connections can often reinforce preconceived notions without critically examining the evidence behind them. This delicate dance brings us to a modern existential twist on the concept. In an age of social media, where people curate their realities, echo chambers become breeding grounds for circular reasoning. We may find ourselves surrounded by voices that amplify our views, leading us to believe in their infallibility without the robust challenge that fosters genuine understanding. This loop can diminish our ability to engage with perspectives that diverge from our own, potentially stymieing our growth and awareness. As we navigate this philosophical landscape, we find ourselves asking, does circular reasoning invalidate our thoughts, or might it simply highlight the complexity of understanding truth? It urges us to question not just the validity of our conclusions, but the way we believe we arrive at them. Do we seek knowledge out of curiosity, or do we cling to familiar thoughts for comfort? In this serene moment of reflection, let us ponder the profound implications of circular reasoning. Instead of seeking definitive answers, perhaps the true value lies in challenging ourselves to rethink our assumptions, to embrace uncertainty rather than retreating to cyclical beliefs. Can we step outside our loops, inviting new perspectives that illuminate the many facets of truth? This exploration of our reasoning is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is an invitation to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The journey continues, and the questions linger, reminding us that every cycle can lead us to new horizons of thought.